Well, dude, I guess we're ready to rock and roll. Why don't you give me a quick little intro, and we're going to roll right into it.
Okay. My name's Coleman Farrington. I was born and raised in Utah. I grew up in a small town called Camas in northern Utah.
What's that by?
It's about 20 minutes from Park City.
Okay.
The surrounding towns are like Oakley, Pioa, but they're all just small towns that kind of run together. And I'm a hunting guide. I've been a full-time hunting guide for about the last 4 or 5 years. But I just grew up hunting. It's always been what I've done. And then, mostly it was growing up, hunting around Utah. And then when I was younger, a little bit in Wyoming. And then it's been the last 3-4 years that, I hunt anything I can anywhere in the world.
Yeah, you're saying you do over 220 days. Fuck me with that thing. You do over 220 days a year on the road. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one because obviously the outdoors and hunting and me, doing a lot of guiding in the past. I love sitting down with experienced guides that especially have world travels and just because of stories. I mean, from one season alone with clients.
Yeah.
Dealing with clients. We just had a guy on that talked about they had a client on a fishing boat in like Kenai, and the guy's life dream was to catch a king salmon, and they catches like some 70, 80-pound king salmon, takes a picture, sits down, and dies right there, and his wife in the boat.
No kidding.
Like 70 years old, like literally takes the picture, his dream trip, sits down, he's like, hey, I'm just going to sit this one out for a second, and just slumps over.
Well, there's a lot worse ways to go.
That's what I'm saying. So, and then I was kind of telling him about Garrett Smith with Alfalfa. They had a bear. I guess a guy died on a client of theirs. Like,
oh, no kidding.
Chased a bear, like did one of those like 17-mile days, and then the guy takes a picture and he's dizzy and they have him go sit down while they're going to take care of the bear and start skinning it out, and they go to like wake him up, and that dude was stiff as a board.
Really?
So, yeah, I want to get him on and hear that story. So I'm sure we're going to hear some wild stories. You've hunted all over the world.
Yeah.
How did you get into, I mean, obviously growing up in the outdoors, it helps transition into that, but what made that step as far as, wanting to become a guide and kind of go that route?
Yeah, so, it was probably when I was, I think I was about 18. I'd post my stuff on social media, on Instagram, like everybody, and I had a TV show hit me up out of Texas. And they said, hey, we're looking for a guy to help with our social media. Would you be interested? I was like, yeah, sure. I'll see what it's about. So they were in Virginia at the time. So I hopped on a flight to Virginia. They're having a boat build out there. Went and met with them, and I decided I was going to do it. And I was down in South Texas, down by Corpus.
Okay.
They had a 100,000-acre ranch, and we filmed the show, and we did some on that ranch, but we did a lot of hunts in New Mexico and Colorado, and then they had a full hunting operation down there as well.
What was the name of the show, if you want me asking?
It was called Wildlifers.
Okay.
So I helped guide down there some, and I did that for about a year, and then I moved back to Utah, and then after that, I think I went and worked at a magnesium refinery.
Really? What was that like?
That's terrible. Like,
what do you do at a magnesium refinery?
So the buildings are like 150 degrees in the summer.
Oh God.
Yeah, I got skinny. Like, I've always been a big guy.
Just
I couldn't keep weight on. I got so skinny. But
is it a processing plant? Like, what are they?
So it was on the edge of the Great Salt Lake.
Okay.
They would take the salt water, and then they'd refine it out and make this brine, and then they'd put it in these cells and just heat it up to like 1,400 degrees. The magnesium would separate from the top, and you go suck it off the top, and then they make giant ingots out of it.
No shit.
Yeah, it was like cells would blow up, guys would get hurt. It was like.
And how old are you at doing this?
I was probably 20 at the time.
Okay, so you're still young. And
yeah.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I did that, and I remember going on a bear hunt with my cousin. We go to Montana every spring, him and I. It's kind of like our annual thing. We go bear hunt in Montana. And he's always the guy I talk shop with. He's like, what are you doing? What are your plans? And I'm like, well, I'm working here. And he was always the guy that's like, you're an idiot. He's like, you need to figure out how to make a living hunting. Mm-hmm. And he told me that for years.
The famous statement,
Yeah. And like everybody, when they think of making a living as hunting, they think of like the influencer or TV show. Well, TV shows don't really make money. There's some do, I guess. The very, very
After
few.
Years of grinding it out.
Most of them are just really wealthy people. that want a tax write-off and want to be on TV.
Yep.
I mean, they're spending, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they're not making a dime.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they get some free gear from a sponsor. Maybe they get a paid partnership, maybe.
Yeah.
But mostly what you see on TV is a lot of very wealthy people that just want to be on TV.
Want to be able to hunt. They're doing it anyways and bring a camera guy along.
Exactly. So that wasn't it. And like the influencer thing, I do not have the personality to be an influencer. Like if you look at my Instagram, it's all just grip and grins. I'm not the guy that's like videoing things on the hunt and
You probably should.
I probably should more. I don't want to like. I think people are so obsessed with their phones and so obsessed with capturing everything that they really don't enjoy it for what it is at the moment.
100%. I agree with you on that because I had like an aha moment a few years ago. I was working with a very large like gun company and as part of their team, and it puts like this pressure on you to like have to produce, have to do. And I was with my kids, and I found one of like the biggest antelopes I've ever seen in my life. And like it just was like this switch that I have to kill this thing. I got to get it on content, and I'm like running myself ragged trying to like produce content for these guys. Where it became nutty. Like it hit that moment. I'm like, I'm not even fucking enjoying this.
Yeah.
Like this isn't even fun to me. My kids they're not even enjoying it because I'm leaving them behind. I have to like almost like frothing, like trying to like because I have to have that status. You gotta to stay relevant. Gotta kill big shit. All that right. And then it just hit that moment, man. And I caught myself chasing this antelope, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Like for this company that doesn't give a shit. And so I feel like the social media side of things, having a company with a big name backing, puts a lot of pressure on things. And I just came to that moment. I was like, this isn't like, I grew up my whole life in hunting. My dad's still to this day runs trap lines, and it's just how we grew up. And then I was like, this isn't why I do this. Yeah. And so, I actually like checked myself, and I was like, okay, like this isn't what I want to show my kids. Like this is the hunting side. This is the influencer TV side, content creator side, trying to push product that you don't even give a shit about side. And so that's where I was like, man, I'm done. And that's where I started phasing myself kind of out of the working with company side things. It just takes so much fun out of it. Instead of just going out. And then when you're constantly having to film, I know you have the stories, but like I've had clients where everything's lined up. You got a deer bedded at 15 yards. You're like, dude, shoot this thing now. And they're like, hold on. They're setting up camera, and you're just like, and it blows this whole entire shot all because they're worrying about capturing it. And I'm just like, fuck, man. Like, I get what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's like I understand why people do it. Yeah. And I think there's some really well put together hunting content
for sure
that I enjoy, but for the most part, I can't watch hunting videos.
Yeah, I go to hunting camps and they'll have hunting shows on, and all the clients are buried in. I'm like, oh god, that's fake. Why were you there? Why is that? You start chipping everything apart or picking it apart, and it's like everything's fake.
Yep. Yeah, it's all recreated.
Yep.
They always leave the animal overnight so they can get better footage the next morning.
Yep.
Like,
that's the stuff that bothers me, and we could go into that a little bit, is just how fake everything is on TV. And you see these guys, and we show up to camp, and these guys are like, oh, do you know so-and-so? Like the Hayneses and all that. And you're like, oh, yeah. And when you're in the industry, it ruins it for you because you see the real side of it.
Don't meet your heroes. I was fairly young 100%. When I was working for that hunting show, and we were, doing all the trade shows, SHOT, ATA, SCI, DSC, every show. I think we did 10 shows that year. So you're meeting everybody. And like, as a young guy, like growing up, you're watching them all on TV and you have them all on a pedestal. And then you meet them in person and you're like, they're
either a huge asshole.
Yeah, that's exactly.
They're lame. Like, you're like, God, people like think you're, they're just huge asshole. They're definitely not who they are. Or they're like, it's this fake persona that this camera gets in front of them and it switches, and they almost have this second personality.
Exactly.
And I'm like, that's strange to me.
Yeah,
like, who I am, if somebody puts a camera on my face, I'm going to be the exact same person when the camera's not in your face. And you start meeting this, but that's the famous saying, don't meet your idols, because you're like, I have guys, dude, you hung out with so-and-so. I'm like, the fucking guy was, you know. But there's also some cool people out there that you meet, and you're like, okay, like, I would totally hang out with that people. They're, these guys, and they're a good group of dudes, but I feel like that's very rare.
Yeah.
You know, because it's
Like,
all. Go ahead.
So I met T-Bone,
Yeah.
and I guarantee you he doesn't remember me at all.
Yep.
But he was one of the most like genuine, down to earth, nice guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna name names, but there's so many of the other ones like on TV. You're like, oh yeah, they seem awesome.
Nope.
They're not.
They're not, man.
No.
I've met some guys that like I don't even care. I'll throw names. I don't give a shit at all. Like the Duck Dynasty guys. One year I was at SHOT Show and I had a group of vets, a bunch of guys, amputees, and you know guys that just been through hell and back. And they see them all and they're like, "Man, do you think you could introduce us?" And I'm that person. I'll walk up to anybody. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Put your pants on the same. You bleed just like me. You know, like I look at everybody as equal. So I walk up and and they're talking and I give them their time and they finish talking and I was like, "Hey man, like sorry to interrupt, gentlemen, but I got a bunch of vets that would love to meet you." And these guys just turn. They're like, "Do you mind?" Like totally. And I there's a picture of me going to shake their like as I'm introducing myself to go shake their hand, and they're two of them are just staring at me like some complete asshole. And I was like, "Okay, like my bad. Like you guys are here and you're a celebrity hunter." Like you can't take the time to meet these guys that are supporting you, and then so that's where it's like you start meeting those types of guys, and then at these shows, and it's just like you learn their true colors. And I'm sure people have said about me, whatever, but like that dude's an asshole. I'm like, yeah, but I'm an asshole on and off the camera.
Yeah,
So.
I guarantee you, there's plenty of people that think I'm an asshole, but you're gonna get it straight one way or another.
That's what it comes down to. They just don't like my opinion or how I voice it, which I could probably use a little bit more tact every now and then. But yeah, it's crazy, man, when you start getting into the depths of it. And I think that's with probably any industry. You know, you start finding and meeting your celebrities and cool people, and you really realize who they are, and it just sucks.
Yeah, there's very few genuine people in the industry, probably overall.
I'll tell you, one of the best ones and I've known her for probably over a decade now is Jana Waller. She's exactly the same person on and off the camera.
Yeah.
Like hasn't changed a bit. I mean, she is the most down to earth. She'll do anything for it. Like how her love for the veteran community is even greater off camera than it is on camera.
That's awesome.
And so that's where I've always had so much respect for her because I spent a lot of time, we've done a lot of hunting camps, Canada, bear camps, things like that, where she's brought vets in. And that woman will do anything for any vet, and it's just awesome. So
that's awesome.
It's good to meet the good side of the industry, and so to be able to be like, okay, this is who you can compare other people to. And so if she can do it, drop everything every time a law enforcement officer or a cop comes by or a veteran, and she just takes all the time in the world and gives them 100% of their attention. Like that's what I look for in these people.
Yeah,
I don't give a shit about your followers. It's how are you treating the kids that are coming up to you, the vets, like your fan base. And so yeah, she's one of those people that it's been awesome to know her. She's done so much for our organization as far as like helping us promoting it on our television series and on Skullbound, and so yeah, she's
awesome.
One of the very rare that I've known for so long that has not changed through all the years.
That's good to hear. I mean, like there are good ones.
Yep. Oh, for sure.
There's just a lot more bad ones.
Got to sift through the shit to get to the good ones. I get it.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, you're getting where were we? Fuck.
Oh, just kind of getting into the industry.
Yeah.
So I left that and then I worked for that refinery.
Yep.
And I've had, for being 27, I feel like I have a lifetime worth of jobs I've done.
Yeah.
Then after that, I went and I shipped taxidermy for about a year and a half, 2 years.
How was that?
It was the coolest job ever / the worst job ever.
Why is that?
So, like, the awesome part about it, we would ship for about 150 to 200 different taxidermists.
Oh, wow.
And they'd be all over the U.S. So, like, I'd start a run, I'd leave Utah, go to Colorado.
So you're delivering shipping.
Yeah.
You're not just, like, the middleman. Okay, so you're actually packing these things up?
Okay. I had a 36-foot gooseneck enclosed trailer, and I'd go pick them up, and, like, we'd secure them in the trailer, and we could do it without crating them. That was the big benefit to the taxidermists.
Are you laying them flat in there, like on the back of the mount, or are you like hanging them on the wall?
So most of your basic shoulder mounts, you just screw boards into the back of the mount and then screw them to the wall.
Got it.
Pedestal mounts, they get tricky because you can't put screws into them. So you got to build cradles and like strap them down.
Okay.
You get creative. There's a million ways to do it, and you just
kind of dealing with somebody's trophy. I mean, once in a lifetime, they may never be able. So you have to be super careful.
Yeah,
with this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's times that we were shipping Marco Polos and Argalis, some sheep that are a couple $100,000 to go hunt.
Did you ever fuck any up?
So I put an elk mount too close to a full body bear, and the elk like rubbed a little bit, and it rubbed like a quarter-sized bear spot into the bear hide.
Where at? Was it?
Just like mid body, about halfway down.
No.
So I trimmed hair off the bottom of the bear, I glued it in, and we were dropping it off to his ex-MLB player in Ocala, Florida, and like I am freaked out because like it looked pretty good, but like I definitely knew it was still there.
Okay.
And we pull up to drop this bear off, and there's about 25 roided guys, all shirtless in kilts.
No.
Like, what the fuck? And then there's a bunch of like women in bikinis and like most redneck, jacked up mud trucks everywhere. And I'm like, where are we? It's like a compound we pull into.
This is in Cali?
No, Florida. Ocala, Florida.
Okay.
So I take the bear in, and they're stoked. Like, they don't like care about anything. They're like, you guys want to stay? And like it felt like it was a cult.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, no, we gotta go.
Would they be just random people? You said these dudes were in kilts?
In kilts. They're all jacked, like roided out in kilts. And they had like this compound with gates and like, so one of my favorite things to do was Google the guys, because like a lot of them were either like business owners or you know, they all had a story, and I was always curious how they made their money, because most of the guys we were dealing with were fairly wealthy. So as soon as we leave, I Google this guy. He's an ex-MLB player that got kicked out because he had like super strong anti-government statements. It was like, he's, you know, that type of guy in the compound and all that. I was like, makes sense. Like it all fit together.
Right on key.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, this is all adding up.
Yeah. But that's the only one I ever messed up.
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good thing though.
Yeah, for sure. Like if it was going to be anybody, like they didn't care at all. They were stoked.
Just some hillbillies that got
yeah, they're just redneck rich.
Yep.
Just like, you give a redneck from Florida, you know, $50 million, they're spending it how you'd expect.
Those are the wildest people you can ever hang around with, are like the hillbilly, white trash, just backwoods, good old boy that becomes into some money. I mean, you want to talk about the wildest time of your life.
Oh, yeah.
Hang out with those people.
Yeah.
I mean, the toys that they create.
Yeah.
And those come out with like a fucking flamethrower with a chainsaw and grenade launcher attached to it. And you're just like...
Yeah, they're the guys that know how to spend the money. Like, you're like, I get it.
Yep.
You know, if I had that, I'd probably do the same thing.
Those are the dudes that are like, money can't buy happiness. You're like, you've never met a rich hillbilly.
Yeah, exactly.
Figure it out real quick.
Yeah. So I did that for about 2 years.
Okay.
And I was just all over the U.S. I was driving 3,000 to 5,000 miles a week. In a 3-month period, I was in every state in the lower 48.
Really?
Yeah, just doing routes around the country over and over. And the guy I worked for, he's from Florida or from Idaho. I was like, dude, we got to figure something out. You know, I got to get spelled out. Like, I can't be on the road constantly. And it just kept going and going. And like, I'd be on the road for 50, 60 days at a time.
What?
And I mean, it's like a lot of the times we wouldn't even get a hotel. We're just going. Most of the time there's two of us, and we just rotate back and forth. There was no DOT, no nothing. We were just going.
No shit.
Yeah. And
that takes a grind. I mean, I guess at that age it's not as bad, but now, Jesus, dude, I'd be done after 2 days. I'd be like smoked.
Yeah, like truck stop showers, and the only time we'd stop is if like we'd get to a place in the middle of the night and the customer wasn't awake yet. Then we'd just have to wait,
Just sleep in the truck?
Yeah, other than that, it was just like constantly on the move.
You had another guy with you, or were you solo for a lot of this?
Most of the time I had another guy with me. Okay. Sometimes I was solo. If I was solo, like, I couldn't keep that pace. There's, when I was by myself, it was a lot slower. But yeah, when there's two of us, it was just go, go, go.
What's your stretch? What can you do at once? Like from rested to like, okay, I have to pull over. How many hours can you do?
I can do 24 pretty easy.
Okay. So, I'm at the 22 mark.
Yeah.
I start really like, I'm like, okay, it's time.
Yeah. When I used to live in Texas, I came home, when I came home the final time, and I think I came home for Thanksgiving, and it was 24 and a half. Oh. And like that, like, you're done by the end of it, but I could do that. But then I get home and just sleep for 10 hours.
I have to. I mean, Texas is Texas is one of the worst
states.
Big. One of the worst states. You just drive for days across Texas.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going from like south, and you go all the way through the like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So I was like all the way southeast down by Corpus.
okay.
So like down on the Gulf. Mm-hmm. And driving back to Utah.
To get anywhere. Oh God, you're going from
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That is rough.
I can do 24 fairly easy. I guess I really haven't driven much further than that.
Yeah.
Most of my drives like are from my house to our camp in Mexico. I'm about 14 hours.
See, that's not bad.
No, and that's like do it in a day. You're there.
Isn't that wild how your suck level when it comes to these types? Because like my wife, she's always like, we travel a lot with the kids, and so she's like, how long do you think we have? And we had this last year, about last year, we had a last minute like business meeting, and the company called us. We're like, hey, can you be in Arkansas tomorrow? And we're like, we got the kids. I'm like, if we're gonna go, we have to leave now. And she's like, how far? I'm like, it's 15 hours. And she's like, oh, it'll take 2 days. I'm like, we leave at this time. We'll be there like this time tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we literally packed all of our shit, threw the kids in with bearded dragons and everything else. I mean, we bombed straight to Arkansas, and just pumped it out. And she was like, oh, that wasn't bad. I'm like, for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the worst guy to road trip with because I don't stop. Like, I hate stopping.
You and I would be perfect.
Yeah, like where I bear hunt in Montana, it's about 11 hours. Mm-hmm. And in my truck, I can go halfway, fuel up, and then make it the rest of the way. And I stop once.
That's if I don't. I travel with a guy now, and he's got the bladder of like a 20-year-old pregnant woman. I mean, it is. Bro, this dude pisses every 20 or 30 minutes.
Oh,
like,
that would drive me nuts.
Before we even get to the Utah border, we've stopped like 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, bro, like, no, like,
yeah,
I can't. Like, I will go all like even my kids. Like, I've trained them. Like when we stop at a gas station, you do your laps, get your snacks, and get in. Like, I've gotten better with the family now because I was like that dad has got to beat the timer. And like, okay, we're gonna be there 15 hours, but I can make it 13. That now I've slowed down quite a bit. I'm like, fuck, we're gonna get there regardless. But yeah, I'm like when I have to stop for no reason, oh my, and I lose time. It
drives me nuts.
Drives me absolutely nuts.
And a lot of my driving, so like. I always have my like planned out hunts that I plan in advance, but I do a lot of just last minute stuff. If I find a week where I don't have anything, I don't sit at home very well. I'll just get online. I'm like, all right, what can I hunt right now?
No kidding.
And I'll find something, and it can be 8 o'clock at night. I'll throw stuff in my truck, and I'll go. Like
I take it you're not married with kids.
No. No. It was it's been probably 3 or 4 years ago. I had just got back from Montana bear hunting, and I didn't have anything to do. And I'm like, man, I just can't sit here. Yeah. So I started Googling. I was like, what's in season? What? And I found out Wyoming turkey opened the next day. So I just started Googling, where do you hunt turkeys in Wyoming? And like a lot of the stuff I found is to go up by Devil's Tower.
Okay.
So it's like 9 o'clock at night. I just throw shit in my truck, drive 12 hours. I hunt for 15 minutes, kill a bird, threw the shit back in my truck, and drove 12 hours home.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the best ones. Like, I've done that with elk before. You drive 2 days, get to Montana, kill an elk in the first 30 minutes. You're like the old Forrest Gump, like, I'm going to go home now. Like, what else do you do, So those are always the best. But at the same time, you're like, all right, I would have liked to have enjoyed this area a little bit. Yeah. Now I got to take care of this stupid-ass freaking 300 pounds of meat and get it home. Yep. Now I'm stressing on that. So, yeah, those are always, I enjoy them, but at the same time, we're like, it wasn't even like, I want it to at least be the amount of time that I drove to be able to hunt in that state. But
yeah,
you
for
take
sure.
them.
We did that 2 years ago, turkey hunting in Mexico. So I guided a couple guys,
and you guys have the Goulds down there, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I got my Grand Slam. I definitely want to do my Royal Slam.
You got it. Like down there, it's insane. Like there's so many birds. So 3 of us decide we want to go back down and turkey hunt. And the ranches we had at that time, they were way south of the border, like almost halfway down through Sonora on the border of Chihuahua.
Oh, no kidding.
And it took us 24 hours of driving to get there. And we had the worst luck. Just, brakes went out on the truck, fuel pumps started going out. God. Just one of those trips. And we finally get there, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and I work down on this ridge, set up, and I can hear birds gobbling. And right at daybreak, they fly down. 2 toms come into the decoys, and I just waited till they lined up. I shot both birds in one shot, and I was done like 5 minutes into the morning.
No.
After driving 24 hours to get
Going
there.
through hell to get there.
Yeah.
Dude, okay, so now that we're talking about Mexico, I know we probably can't get on too much. You're still hunting down there, but I want to get into some. Okay, sorry, I there's so many different things I want to go because I know you hunt all over, and I'm excited to just pick your brain on certain areas. But I've heard some crazy shit. So what do you guys got going on down in Mexico?
So we primarily do mule deer and desert sheep. We'll do some coos.
Okay.
We're in northern Sonora for the most part. So we run generally about 50, 60 deer hunters and about 10 sheep hunters a year down
How
there.
many acres are you talking to run that many through? I feel like that's quite a bit.
Oh, I don't know the exact number. It's over, I think it's probably 600,000 maybe.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, so we have, I think last count, we have 43 ranches.
Wow.
Leased or ranches that we can hunt on.
In all free range.
Yep, all free range.
Damn, good for you. Because I know there's a big controversy down there that's really come out the last couple of years that there's big outfits that are down there running these giant deer, but I'm getting the picture of these deer sent, I have them before they're even dead with a ear tag,
blindfold on,
blindfold, tongue hanging out, and they're measuring these things out for the clients. So,
Yeah.
so let's get into that a little bit because there's a huge stigma about Mexico. You always hear so many negative things, but then I talk to so many guides and I haven't had the opportunity to go to Mexico yet, but like I'm also one of those people that's like on the fence with it because I have buddies that are in the industry, and you hear certain things, and then you hear, man, it's the greatest time of your life down there. But at the same time, there's a lot of scary shit that's going on with the borders and all that kind of stuff. So I would like to touch, if you can. I know you still work down there, so
Yeah, so there's definitely cartel activity. There's no way around that.
Are the majority of these big ranches run by cartel?
We try not to deal with any direct cartel ranches.
Okay.
Through chain ownership, I'm sure there's some that are, just you never know 100%.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a guy that you think is a legitimate businessman, has multiple legitimate businesses, but you really don't. You never know exactly. But
Okay.
I feel like most of the guys we deal with are pretty stand up, pretty straight shooters. But I'm sure some are.
Have you had any run-ins?
With the mafia?
Yeah.
Well, so down there, everybody says mafia. Nobody really says cartel. But like we run into them fairly frequently.
Really?
It's never in town. We'll be, in the middle of nowhere on a ranch, and all of a sudden you have, 5 black Escalades come rolling by. And
Oh shit. They don't question anything? They know what you guys are doing, or is it kind of like a peace treaty that you're like, hey, we don't fuck with you,
Yeah, they don't care at all what we're doing.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll stop and talk to them, or they'll stop and talk to us, and they just want to know, what are you doing? Where are you going to be hunting?
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll be like, hey, stay on that side of the ranch, or whatever.
Okay.
And we just really kind of, they do their thing and we do ours.
Yeah.
But they're definitely all over down there.
For sure.
I feel very comfortable down there for the most part,
Yep.
We just try to be smart. We don't drive around late at night.
Yeah.
We try to be done driving around by, 10, coming back from ranches, get back to camp by like 10 at the latest. And we just try to be smart with what we're doing.
Got it.
Because the biggest thing that we worry about is if we got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because, there are multiple mafias in the area that we're in, and, they fight amongst themselves. So
you're talking getting caught in some turf war.
Yeah, if they have something set up and maybe they're driving the same truck you are or whatnot. So we just, we're careful. During the day, not much happens generally.
Yeah.
So we're just conscious about that, and we, it's not worth the risk to us to, be out and about at night or whatever. So we just, we're really careful with that.
Yep.
But yeah,
because there's a lot of clients. I mean, you guys are having a huge repeats with a lot of your customers. So obviously, if they're having a shit experience, they wouldn't be coming back.
Yeah.
So it obviously shows that you guys are, showing a good time, not having the major issues that you hear of some of these. I also think a lot of these outfitters are pushing limits, and doing a lot of shady shit because you hear the stories of some of these guys down there. And
there's some guys that are tied in deep.
I've heard.
I've
heard some stories, and like the ranches that they're on are 100%. Like
Yeah, there's guys
mafia ranches.
that are just asking for it. Like, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And you hear those stories, man. And then I think that's a big stigma that gets tied with Mexico is those few outfitters. Because, I mean, those obviously the mafia ranches down there, they're connected. I mean, and they have everything that obviously the outfitter's going to be wanting, and they're making money off of him.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you hear these guys just getting kind of tied up into the mob or the cartel down there, and then they end up just going away or disappearing.
Yeah, like, they're just the reality of life down there.
Yeah.
There's nothing we can do about it besides, just try to stay out of their way. They do their thing, we do ours. That being said, they do have some really good ranches.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have some great ranches that personally we would love to hunt them, but
Yeah.
it's not worth the risk to us to take hunters onto those.
Got it.
But there's a lot of outfitters that are just desperate for good ground because ranches in Mexico are pretty competitive now.
Really?
Yeah, like
Okay. When's that blown up? The last few years, or has it been like that for a while?
I've really only been involved in Mexico about the last 5 years.
Okay.
But even in the last 5 years, I've noticed it get more and more so. But I think probably about 10 years ago is when Mexico really, 10 to 15 years ago, you hear early 2000s guys going down there and shooting deer for nothing and sheep for nothing. And then it kind of got commercialized and more guys realized the opportunity that's down there.
Because there's just giants
yeah,
down there.
It's really tough hunting. The deer density isn't great, but there are really big deer.
Yeah.
There's no winter kill. Drought can have a big effect on antler growth.
What do they have for predators? They have a lot of mountain lion down there, or no?
There's some.
Okay.
A lot of coyotes. But that's about it. I know the fawns get hammered pretty hard.
Yeah.
But if they can, make it to adulthood, I feel like they have a pretty good chance of making it.
Yeah.
So.
And so with that, I mean, you guys are, with that many acres, how do you cover all that? Or are you guys hunting each, like a ranch for a certain amount of clients and then you move to another ranch, or are you guys jumping around and constantly searching?
So as guides down there, as long as you're doing, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're hunting, how you should be, like, you pretty much have free reign to any of the ranches you want. So we split it up. Some of them are so far apart that we split it up into multiple camps. So like our north camp may have 20 ranches and our south camp may have 20. And then we have a few ranches that are so far out that if you're going to hunt that ranch, you just go out and stay on that ranch.
You're committed, yeah.
So as a guide down there, they don't micromanage us at all.
Okay.
They trust us to make the best decision. So we just kind of talk amongst ourselves. Where are you going? What are you doing?
Got it.
And just make sure that we're not going to be on the same ranches. And generally, we like the guys to try to spend at least a couple days on a ranch. Okay. Because you have so much ground. It's easy to just be like, you run through a ranch. Oh, we didn't see anything. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. But you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You really need to get on a ranch, see what's going on at the time you're there, and spend the time to figure out what the deer are doing and get them killed.
Got it.
So the guides kind of all have a certain set of ranches that they like.
That once they learn it.
Like there's ranches that I haven't even been on.
Yeah.
But there's other guides that they're their favorite ranches. So we kind of split it up amongst ourselves because trying to learn that many ranches.
Oh,
it's
like that many acres. You could be down there for years.
Yeah. So, we can hunt any ranch we want, but we kind of all get, I'd say probably a core 10 to 15 ranches that we focus on.
Yeah.
And, we're always talking amongst ourselves, what'd you see? And all the guides are, helpful.
Yep.
Like we all try to help each other out. If somebody tags out, they hop in with the next guy and help them get a deer.
That's good. I feel that I've worked with some guys in the past that they'd tag out and they were done and they just sit in the lodge or they'd go home and you're out there day 3, day 4 having to turn anything up here and you're like, fuck, dude,
yeah.
I was always that guy. As soon as you were done, especially if one guy had a 2-on-1, I'd be like, hey, you want me to grab one of your clients? or hey, you want me to come glass for you? So it's nice when you have a bunch of guides that are on the same page, on the same level as far as just getting it done. Because obviously if everybody's tagging out, the whole camp's winning.
Yeah, for sure. We have a really good group down there. There's not a whole lot of ego. People are generally really happy to see each other, do well.
Yep.
And that makes it nice. Like, obviously, like, first priority is your client tagging you out.
Oh,
and, like,
for sure.
that's the best feeling when your hunter kills a giant deer. But everybody's pretty happy for each other when their client tags out.
What are we talking average deer down there wise? I mean, what are you guys looking for? Because you go some places like, oh, we average 160, 107. I mean, what are you guys like? If you see something, you're like, nah, we're waiting for.
So we sell it as a 180 plus hunt.
Okay.
Which for free range Mexico, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Probably this last year, about 30% of our hunters killed 200-inch deer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there are a lot of big deer, but not everybody's going to get a 200-inch deer.
For sure.
Which most, like our return clientele, they know the situation. We tell all of our guys, it's completely up to them, but I'll tell a guy, we'll get a chance at a mature deer this week.
Yeah.
You should, unless weather's bad or whatnot. It's still a grind. Mexico is not an easy place to hunt. I, kind of fill them out. If they absolutely are the type of guy that has to go home with something, I say if it's a 180 plus deer that's mature buck, I'd shoot it.
Yeah.
And then they have the option to hunt a second deer if they want.
And so you say there's certain types of guys, which it always cracked me up. You'd get the clients and they get in the truck and it's the first morning, and I'd always like to feel them out if you didn't get a chance to the night before. And my favorite guys were always like, I'm like, all right, gentlemen, like, what are we looking for? And I'm like, 200.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, fuck. Here we go. I'm like, so what's your biggest mule? They're like, oh, I haven't killed one yet.
Yeah.
And you're like, bro, like.
Yeah, that.
Everybody, especially the eastern, southeast guys, they think in Texas, they think every mule deer is going to be a 200-inch muley.
Texas.
And you're just like, even though I love Texas clients because they're the first ones that are just hanging out the window with a Coors Light and a rifle, just blasting anything.
Yeah.
So you never have to worry about that shit. But they're always 200 inches. That's what I want, And so you're like, okay. But I mean, you'll have a client that could come out first hunt he's ever done, opening morning, kill a 220 deer, and you could have a client that's been out there for 9 years in a row. And, hasn't had the opportunity.
It's funny. We have guys that come every year and kill 200-inch deer with us every single year. And, a lot of that's luck, but a lot of it also is that they're the type of guys that are going to stay in the hunt, the whole hunt. Because, like I say, it's a grind. Most people really don't understand that until they're down there.
Are you walking miles grind? Is it just sitting in the truck, just beating the shit out of yourself? Grind? I mean,
it'll be high racking some, and that's just
you're tossing you around everywhere.
And then, just getting up high and glassing, and it's just some days you don't see a lot of deer. Like if you see 10, 15 deer in a day in Mexico, you've had a really good day.
Okay. Is it just because it's so thick and you're at ground level? Is it hard to get elevation to glass?
Some ranches are like completely flat, no elevation whatsoever.
Okay.
And those are the worst because you can't do anything on those ranches besides high rack.
Okay.
If they have elevation, you just get up and glass because the mule deer, like, here we're used to mule deer living in the mountains. In Mexico, they don't. They live in the flats.
Oh, really?
So you'll have the coos deer up on the mountains, and then the mule deer just live in the flat valleys.
Okay.
And, you have 10 feet of brush, and it's just thick as hell. And it's tough hunting. And, mentally, it's just really tough to stick it out.
Are they 5-day hunts?
We do 6 days.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's the guys that, every morning are excited to go up and glass and are willing to put in the work.
Yep.
Those are generally the guys that are consistently successful.
I feel like that's every outfit.
Yeah.
You always get the one guy who's like, hey, I always ask, like, who wants to grind it out? And the first guy that raises his hand, I'm like, all right. And then, and then they're usually the ones that are at least getting an opportunity at a giant.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that, if you want to go back for lunch and eat, no, stay out. Okay, cool. And then once you learn that, it's like you're not even stopping. You're just, here's a sandwich. Let's just keep grinding.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, we have guys that, will do everything in their power, and like we'll be doing everything in our power to get them a deer. And we've had guys that it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And
that's
for a couple years, 2-3 years in a row, we've had guys, and like generally those are the guys that are looking for that really special deer, like a 200-inch plus deer.
Mm-hmm.
So they're seeing deer, but they'll do everything in their power to get a big deer, and it just doesn't come together. Generally, we'll work with them and we'll make it happen. Eventually, but there's no guarantees. It's free range. Yeah, there's only so much we can
That's
do.
hunting.
Yeah.
You know? That's always funny too, because you get some of those guys that they try so hard, they're obsessed. And it's almost like, man, if you just relax, like it'll.
Yeah.
So every deer they're making mistakes because they're rushing things, and there's all this pressure on them, and then you get this guy that's killed. God, I had one guy that come hunt with me, and I mean I want to say he had like 30 or 40 deer muleys that were all over like 210. I mean, this guy
Really?
just not a social media dude, just made his money, and I think his deer budget was like 250,000-300,000 a year just on mule deer.
Really?
And he'd hunt everywhere. And so
Where's he from?
Utah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
There's this guy thinking of from California that I was wondering if it was him.
I've had a couple of the guys from Cali, and that's what's crazy. Some of the biggest clients come out of California,
Yeah.
and they just hide in these little pockets, and they like live in San Francisco, and this dude's out just murdering everything all over the
Yeah.
world, and nobody would even know. But yeah, it's crazy. But like those guys are just like, hey, if you think it'll break 200, I mean, I had a guy, we crawled our asses off forever, hours stalking this deer, laying out in these flats, and we get in, and we're like, I want to say we're like 25 yards from this deer, and he's like, what do you think? He's gonna go 200, and like I was putting this deer at like that 95 to 200.
That's the worst. I hate those when a guy's like 200 or nothing.
Yes,
And you're like, you can't guarantee it,
and
but you're just like, shoot.
I knew it was right there. And it was a beautiful old white face,
Yeah.
Roman nose. I mean, it met every check, And so
Yeah.
we crawl in. It's right there. It turn every now and then. And I'm like, God, like if that was. And he's like, what do you think? I'm like, it's right there. He's like, could you guarantee me 200? I was like, I can't. Like, it's
Yeah.
gonna be, and I'm usually within a couple inches. And I'm like, I just 100% I can't. And he's like, you don't think so? And I'm like, nope. And he's like, okay, let's go find another one. And just stands up. And I'm like, and this deer just looks at her right there, and it blows out of there. And I'm like, God, I could have brought my next client. And I never saw the deer again.
Really?
I never stopped running.
Yeah.
But and you get those are the good, the double-edged sword clients. Like
Yeah.
once you find that one, it's a no-brainer. Cool. But like if it's even close and there is any question, they're like, I'm good with it.
Those types of guys, I don't have any issue with them.
Yeah.
As long as they realize, they're asking for, something that's uncommon.
Oh, for sure.
And if they're the type of guys that can go home empty-handed
And
be
happy.
completely fine with it. Yeah.
Those are honestly the best clients.
Yeah, like I'm completely fine with that.
And they tell you, hey, Bam, I'm cool just being here. I've killed enough. If it happens, it happens. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, thank God. Like, but it's the guys like, oh, I've never killed a deer before, and I only want a 200-inch muley. And I'm like, and then you're showing them a 180, just solid old mature deer with character, and then you're like, I bet you tell them like, I want bigger. I'm like, that's a no-brainer. Like, you should really consider this. And they're just like, oh, I want bigger. You're just like, God, man, like I would shoot that deer in a heartbeat.
I had a hunter this last year that we'd got on a 200-inch typical at like 60 yards, and he just couldn't find it in scope.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was 2 days later, I think it was the evening of day 5, we got on this buck that was probably 35 wide, just stupid heavy. I think he was a mainframe 3x4, but then he had these giant hook cheaters. But he didn't have much for forks, but he's just one of those old troll bucks.
Old deer.
Probably mid-80s.
Yeah.
He's like, is he 200? I was like, no. But it's one of those deer that, like, I would have taken over a lot of other 200-inch deer. And he's like, no, I'm just out of my mind. And then right after that, we got on a mid-90s typical. And it's evening of day 5.
Mm-hmm.
He has one more day to hunt. And we sat and looked at that deer for like 30 minutes. And then he's at 120 yards. And I hate to be the guy that's like, shoot. Because I don't want to tell, like, I'll tell him what I think about it.
Yep.
But I don't want to tell somebody definitely shoot and then have it not be what they want. And then finally he's like, what do you think? I was like, man, it's day 5. You haven't killed a mule deer before. I was like, I would have killed him 30 minutes ago. Oh, okay. Like, shoots him twice and wounds him. Tracked him for 3 miles and never found him.
No.
Yeah.
The worst, man.
Yeah.
That's the worst part, I think, of guiding is watching these guys that come out and you're putting them on. At least for me, this is my opinion. And something that, like, I would never have the opportunity to hunt, right?
Yeah.
Your guide, it's like you're sitting on this once-in-a-lifetime animal, and they brag the whole entire time of how long they can shoot, how long their longest shot, and then they get out there and they just completely gut punch something, or Archery, guys. Archery elk hunting to me is I think we should ban it. I'll be honest with you. I think it is the most inhumane, cruel season. I talked to my buddy. I don't know if you know James Nash at all.
I know of him, don't know
So
him
him and I have this conversation all through September. I'm like, God, what are we banning this season? Because it's like you get these guys, and not to knock them, but they watch the influencer hunters and these YouTubers, and they're I shoot 1,000 rounds or shoot 1,000 arrows a week, and I'm out in reps, and I'm running, train to hunt, all this shit. And you call a bull in it, it's 12 yards, standing screaming in the face, and they gut punch it. And I'm like,
yeah,
like, come on, man. Like, we got to make these count, because you can train for everything. You could train for every scenario. You cannot train for an elk screaming in your face just coming. I mean, I'm sure you've seen guys that they can't even draw their bow, and you're just like looking at this guy like, shoot this fucking thing. Like,
the last archery elk hunt I guided, I think it was a 5-day hunt. We were like 3 days in. We'd been struggling.
Yeah,
it'd been tough, and then we just did this death march. I took him all over hell and back because he just was one of those guys that was up my ass. What are we doing? Well, we should probably do this. We should probably do this. And like the best way to take care of that is like a good old death march.
Okay, so if your guide takes, I used to do this even on the plains of Colorado. I'd find those empty riverbeds that were just full of like that soft sand, and I just walk their asses all morning.
Yeah.
Get to the end of the property. Oh, nothing here. And turn around, and it shuts clients up real quick.
Yeah. It's a good way to level the playing field, get them back on where they need to be.
That's the old guide trick. If your guide takes you on a death march for no reason, you're probably kind of an asshole. And you should probably just listen to what he has to say.
Yeah.
That's definitely a trick.
We get to this big, we're working across this flat top, and we get to this north-facing slope where it drops down.
Yeah.
And we get to the edge, and he's behind me probably 5 yards, and I cow call. And this bull was bedded beneath a pine like 25 yards from us. And he jumps up and just screams. He's probably like a 320 bull. For that area, it was a really big bull. And he's, 20 yards from me. My hunter's, a few yards behind me, just kind of offset to the left. And I hear him knock an arrow. And this bull's just kind of looking, trying to figure out what's going on. And he's turning. And every time he'd turn broadside, I'd cow call, and he'd stop and just scream. He had no idea we were there. He just knew. So I hear my hunter start to draw back. And then he lets it down real quick, and I feel his arrow brush my arm, and I was like,
no.
Yeah.
No.
He couldn't get it back. He was shaking so bad.
I mean, in a way, that's what we live for.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but at the same time, you're like, bro, make this happen.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, but, I've never had to help a client draw, but I have some buddies that have said that they've been behind their client just to help them get it past that point. And I'm like, dude, I haven't either. I'm more of like the sit there and be like,
yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you gotta be able to take care of yourself.
It's on you at that point. Yeah. So, clients are the most fun, fascinating people you could ever have the chance to spend time. I mean, they're such a vast personalities and characters, and they come. I mean, I had one client once that this dude, he owned his world, like his world. Everything revolved around him, from his business to his employees. Because I'd listen to this guy talk on the phone, and just when he said jump, the whole entire world jumped, and he thought that was going to translate to me.
Yeah.
And long story short, I've never chewed a client's ass before, like knife hand drill instructor in his face, and he screwed up like 3 giant deer in the first day and a half, and So anyways, he's like, well, you walk too fast, and I'm just like, listen. And so we ended up having words in this field because he was questioning like what I was trying to get him to do, and I'm like, man, I need you to listen to me, kind of deal. And so once we had that come to Jesus moment, we're actually great friends to this day.
Yeah.
But he just had to realize like, okay, this isn't because he was from Florida.
Yep.
Shows up on a Western hunt with muck boots on, these big clod hoppers, and and like we're stalking these deer, and when you're hunting them out in the plains and these flat areas, I mean, it's like some days you're praying for wind to kind of conceal something. And he just glomp, glomp, everywhere he walked was so loud. And, this guy had gout, and so he's always complaining about his feet. So I would just leave him in the truck, and I'd go walk these bottoms for hours and try to find something. I'd pin the deer, try to drive as close as I could to get him out to it. But yeah, once he realized like this wasn't his world and I was running it, and I'm here for him, we ended up having the greatest time. He ended up he missed, I want to say he missed 7 deer, all under 60 yards with a muzzle loader. I'm talking like shooting feet over them. And finally, the last day, we missed this deer like an hour before dark. Beautiful, like mid-'80s deer, old kickers, character. He's bladed on everything. I have it actually on video. We walk up in this, it's sleeping in a river bottom, and I just like grab him and I just walk him like to the edge, and this deer's just standing there, and he shoots over his back and runs off. And you can hear me in the video. I'm like, I can't do any better for you. You know,
Yeah.
I can't. And so as we're walking back to the truck, he's pissed. He's like, let's just go home. You did your job. Like, I've had so many opportunities. I'm like, fuck yeah, I did, you know? And as we're leaving and headed back to town, where we cross, there's this like an L-shaped tree line, you know, an old homestead was out there at some point, and there's this old ancient buck laying right off the side of the road. Anyways, I find the people, door knock. This old lady answers. I mean, she had purple hair, you know, and I'm trying to weasel my way in like this property, and she's like, well, I'll let you hunt, but you got to do some chores for me first. And I'm like, okay, and this deer's bedded like right on the side of this road. I'm like, somebody's gonna see it. It's the last day of this guy's hunt. Like, I'm like, yeah, I come back and help you. She's like, oh, you can help me now. This old lady had me pulling all the AC units out of every window in the house. The clients in the
You're
truck
just
the whole
ripping
time.
them out, trying to get it done before
I'm
dark.
fully clothed, like all my hunting gear on. It's freezing. It's a late muzzleloader season, but I'm in this house that's like 120 degrees with the wood stove going. I'm drenched with sweat. I come finally finish. She's trying to hug me, give me cookies and shit. I was like, I'll come back. I swear. Like, I want to go kill this deer. And she's like, okay, you can go kill it. And I come back out and I'm drenched. Like, my client's like, what the hell did you do? He's like, what'd you do in there? He's like,
You did what you had to do to get hunting permission.
that's what I said. I was like, hey, I ride for the cause. We got to kill this deer. And he's just dying laughing. He's actually like this big, he does missions all over the world, helps with, you know, through his church and stuff. And so he thought I was serious. Like, so he's just like, you know, like, I appreciate the work you're putting in. I'm like, I didn't realize he thought I was serious.
Yeah.
When I was like, hey, I ride for the cause, whatever we got to do to get into a property. You know, like, you've seen those old memes. Like,
Oh, yeah.
How much hunting acres, you know, one of those. And so
Yeah.
he's dying laughing, and he thought I was serious and really, like, thought I was doing what I had to do for this woman, which was take all the AC units out of her windows, and I'm sweating. And anyways, we go and we come around the corner, the deer's still laying there. And I'm like, oh, man. I'm like, so I put the shooting sticks out. I grabbed this guy, and I grabbed him by his chest because he'd missed 6, 7 deer. And I was like, just put a round in this deer. Just put a round in it, and we'll find it. Like, because out there, they don't go anywhere. You can just watch them go to a drainage, and they just bed up. I'm like, please, for the love of God, just put her. And I'm holding him, and he's just this old man, like, you know, like, I'm like, just fucking shoot the fucking deer, you know, at this point. And I put his muzzle loader on the shooting sticks, and I pull him until he stiffens up, and I know he has it. I'm like, you know, like when a dog locks on. I'm like, just squeeze. I'm in his ear, like, please, for the love of God, just squeeze. And the wind is blowing, not at this deer, but like at the deer in a way. Like, all it's got to do is just shift, and we're done. And this thing's just laying there in the sun, eyes closed, and I'm like, oh, please. And there's this black wall moving across the plains, like this storm, like just coming. And I'm like watching this thing, and I'm watching this deer, and we're putting everything together. Finally, he shoots, smoke clears, and this deer's just laying there, and he's like, yeah, he's cheering. And I'm looking at this deer, and it looks really stiff, you know. And I'm like, reload. He's trying to high-five me. I'm like,
hit him high.
Reload, please, just reload. And so he's reloading his muzzle loader. We go walking over to it, and we walk up, and this thing's just looking at us. I'm like, oh, fuck. I knew. You could just, you know, you see enough animals go down, you know, when it's either dead or it's spined or whatever. And he looks, he's like, well, what'd I do? And this guy's still on cloud 9. I'm like, well, you got to put this deer down. So I'm like, put it right behind the armpit and just let it have it. This dude cocks this old, like, octagon barrel, you know, the flip side, you know, back in Django out of the tree, and shoot like one of those looking things. Yeah. And he one-hands this muzzle loader, puts it on the deer, and right as I'm like, no, like, he just rips one, and this muzzle loader, goes flying. He grabs his face and starts screaming. I'm like, holy shit. He's like, and I'm like, I thought the round ricocheted and hit him. I didn't know what happened. He's screaming. He's holding his face. His muzzle loader just goes flying out of his hand. I'm like, grab his muzzle loader. I'm grabbing him. I'm trying to move his hands, and he's got this big red welt on his face. I don't know if it was his gun or like a rock flew up, and he's like, "This is the greatest day of my life," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like this from start to finish with this guy was an absolute shit show. We missed some of the craziest. Like we found a giant stag buck that was full velvet and late muzzle. I mean, thicker than Coke cans. I mean, he had just points. I mean, just missed so many cool deer. And we ended up shooting like this. Like, it was ancient. This deer was, I mean, one of the oldest deer I've ever killed. And it was probably like a 170-inch deer. And he's on the phone like, "It's the biggest deer I've ever killed." Like, screamed to his wife. And I was like, okay, like, this is, he's like, "It's the biggest deer I've ever seen." I'm like, "You missed like 3 that were significantly bigger than this one." But he was the greatest time. And he comes back every year and has the time of his life. And, and he's like, and I gave him a lot of shit over it. And he's just like, "Well, you told me there was going to be close shots. I thought you meant 100 yards was close." He's like, "You didn't tell me they were going to be like 5 feet." And so, because he was, I mean, I'm talking, we had deer under like feet. And
really?
Like bedded on the side of fences on tumbleweeds. And we're just walking up and I'm like, just over the fence and shoot this deer bedded. And you just see there, I have pictures of these racks just sticking out of tumbleweeds. And the wind's blowing 100 miles an hour because you could walk right up on them. I mean, and just swinging and missing like by yards over these deer. So he ended up, but I mean, stuck it out. And the guy, it ended up being one of my greatest clients. I mean, we're friends to this day. We still talk constantly. And so, but he ended up becoming like, went from one of my pain in the ass. Like I came back, told the outfitter, like, "I'm gonna fight this dude before the season, before this week's over. Like this guy's miserable. Just the way he talked to, you get those guys.
Talks down to you.
Talks down. They don't talk to you. They talk down to you and everything. And they don't have a sense of humor. And they're just the whole time you're like, oh, this is gonna be a grind. But
I've learned it really. So like guides love to bitch about clients. Mm-hmm. It's one of our favorite pastimes. Like
I wanted to start a whole series called Guide Times.
Yeah.
And just talk to guides and just hear their crazy stories about clients.
Yeah, but really like 95% of hunters that you deal with are fine.
Maybe one bad one a season.
Yeah.
That is absolute horrible.
I'm not saying they're guys that like you'd want to hunt with on your own time. A bunch of them are. Mm-hmm. But like even the ones that are like, you're just pretty business with them. I'm here to guide you. Yep. You're here to hunt with me. Most of them are just fine. Like you can joke around with them, have a good time. When you get a guy like that though, I've learned you're way better off just calling him out and putting him in his place. And, it generally goes way better after that.
Usually does. And then some of them take it super personal.
Yeah.
So I had a guy that he came out and he was one of those and archery hunters are a different breed.
If they're good archery hunters.
Strict archery hunters. Not guys who are just there for the archery season, but like haven't shot a rifle in 20-year type archery hunters.
They're different for sure.
They're everything is thought out and they have to, and so I had one guy and man, it got to the point where he would ask me an opinion. I'd be like, what do you want to do? Here's your options. What I learned on those types of archery guys, because if you give them your opinion and they take that route and it doesn't pan out, then it's all your fault.
Yep.
The whole thing was your fault. Well, we should have sat or we should have done it. It's like, I gave you 2 options. And so that's where I learned with those types of guys, like we can sit and wait this out and it might walk back through here or we can crawl in it. We could try to get around. Like I like to give them the options and let them pick one because, I mean, I've had so many times where, hey, I think this is going to work out, and you do it, and then it should have panned out if they would have listened to you, but then they do something, and they're like, well, I told you we should have, and you're like, oh, here we go. But it's super rare. For the most part, I mean, as long as you're listening to your guide, taking the direction, and, able to hike and do what they do, I mean, usually it's going to be a pretty awesome hunt. Yeah,
with archery hunters, I've never guided an archery mule deer hunter in Mexico. I've done some sheep.
Okay.
I'll just kind of fill them out.
Yeah.
And if it's a guy that knows what he's doing, I treat it like I'm just there to help him find the sheep.
Yep.
I have a guy from Wisconsin, I believe. His name's Thomas Herman. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. He hunted sheep with me in Mexico, and I just put an earpiece in his ear, sat at the bottom of the mountain, and let him do his thing.
Oh, God, those are the best. Like, hey, there it is. And they're like, I got it. And you're like, I always feel bad because for me, I'm super prideful. Like I want to make sure everything goes as best as possible.
Yeah.
But then when you get those guys who are like, I got it. And you're like, okay. And then they sit back and you watch them just like unfold and you're watching from the truck or you got the spotter on them. You're like, oh shit, you're like, this is going to happen, know? And then they end up sticking it. They're cheering. And you're just like, cool, man. Like, and they have the time of their life. And it's just, some guys are killers. They just need the opportunity to go out and just, okay, here you go. Like that's what it comes down to. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. That ram, he had hunted for 2 or 3 days, hadn't found a shooter ram. And then we found him, probably 45 minutes before dark the night before. And he wanted to go after him, but I was like, I just don't think there's time. I don't think we're going to have time to get on him. And I think if anything, you're probably going to blow him out. It's not going to work. So he's like, all right. And jokingly on the way back, I was like, what's going to happen is we're going to come tomorrow morning. We're going to find him at 6:45. You're going to stalk up there, shoot him, and he's going to run down to the bottom, so I don't have to hike up there. We get there the next morning. I find the ram again at 6:43.
Right in the same area?
Yeah, he'd moved maybe 150 yards.
That's always the best.
Yeah, and he gets up, stalks around on this ram, got into like 30 yards, but the ram was like bedded beneath a cliff.
Oh, so when he's looking down, he couldn't
see him. Okay. He ended up sitting there for like 8 hours. And the ram finally gets up, he sticks it, and that ram ran straight down to the bottom. I had like a 200-yard walk across the flats to get to it.
Oh, God, those are the best.
Yeah.
Count those ones.
Yeah, like we had to find like a outcropping to set them on just to get good pictures. Otherwise, it looked like we just killed them like literally completely
off the side of a road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've done that before where you just catch an animal in the most random place. Like when we were doing a bunch of odd down in Texas, you leave the ranch, and that ranch house, there's one right around the corner, and you're like, oh, that's a hammer. Like, shoot that one now. And then you're like, well, shit, we're down here in the flats right off the side of the road. You got to, like, find an going to make it look like it's sheep country.
Yeah,
They're down in the
exactly.
flats. Yeah, those are always funny to me. You're like, well, we're going to go pose it up on we're going to go get a better picture, a better view. Yeah. Because it looks like you literally just shot it off the side of a road, which you're like.
Which you did, but not everybody needs to know that.
No, you're like, fuck it, whatever. So, guides, man. I mean, clients. Have you had any crazy client experiences? What's one that stands out when you think of a client?
I had a sheep hunter that almost shot me.
Really?
So we've only ever had one sheep hunter, the history of Old Mexico, that went home without a sheep.
Really?
And he's a guy from Colorado. He's probably mid-50s. He brought his 83-year-old stepdad on the hunt with him.
On a sheep hunt?
Yeah, which in Mexico, a lot of it's like driving and glassing. Okay. So it's not.
So he's part of it.
Yeah.
Just not the stalking, I take it.
But this guy had been in a really bad accident when he was a teenager, and it left him with a lot of physical limitations and mental limitations.
Okay.
So he shows up and he's shooting this 300 Norma with a loophole scope that's older than you and I combined, and he has 3 different types of ammo.
That's always not a good sign.
And we go to shoot it, before the hunt, and it won't eject. The type of ammo he wanted to shoot wouldn't eject out of the rifle.
Okay.
So I had to find a welding rod and carry it with me. And if you had to, I'd have to throw a welding rod down the barrel to get the shell out. And I had my rifle with me, and I was like, "Hey, you want to try this?"
Yeah.
It's dialed, everything. And he's like, "No, I'm not shooting a rifle. It's not mine. I don't feel comfortable with it." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." So we find a band of rams. I think there's like 8 or 9 rams together, but they're up pretty high, and he can't hike up to them. So we sit there. We went back for 2 days and watched these rams, and I was just hoping they'd come down low, because sometimes the sheep will be like right at the valley floor.
Yep.
It's not too common down there, but it definitely happens. And
are there watering tanks and stuff down below that draws them down at night or anything like that?
On some of the ranches we hunt, there is a lot of the times, like there's rock bowls up on top of these mountain ranges that'll trap water.
Oh, okay.
And that's where they're getting it. But a lot of them, there is water down below.
Okay.
But these rams would not move. And third day, finally, I was like, we either go up after them or we just go find different sheep.
Yeah.
So he's like, no, I want to go up after him. So we go up in there, and it's a rough hike, but not terrible.
Yeah.
I knew it was kind of like on the borderline of his capabilities. But we get up in there, and we get on a bench directly across from them at like 275 yards.
Oh.
And
which is a chip shot with that. His should be with his rifle.
Yeah. And earlier, he's like, "Oh yeah, 800 yards, no problem," which I knew.
Cut it in half.
Yeah, so we're 270 yards, and I'm like, all right, the ram. There's a big ram that had a big chunk out of his side. He's probably a 10-year-old ram. And I was like, that's the ram to kill, and he's bedded broadside. Everything's perfect. And he gets set up, and he's like, I can't see him. I was like, can you not see him, or can you not see any of the sheep? And he's like, I can't see any of the sheep. And there's 8, 9 rams, like, in the wide open directly across from us. So I was like, all right, well, you know, let me see. So I get it set up, and, like, I looked through his rifle scope, and that was the first time I did.
Yeah.
It was like looking through stained glass. And I was like, oh, shit. I can understand why you're having trouble.
God.
But, like, I didn't have a death grip on me, but I, like, wedged it in between my pack, got it cranked in, like, put it right on him. But he had a really hard time laying down.
Okay.
So, like, every time he'd go to lay down, he'd bump it. And he's like, I'm just going to shoot him offhand. And I was like, you're not going to hit him offhand.
No.
So we're going back and forth, and he's getting frustrated. And his parents had told me, you know, like, make sure he eats, make sure he drinks. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, this isn't going anywhere. I was like, Mike, you want a snack? And he's like, yeah, that sounds nice. And I was like, all right, let's just eat a snack, drink some water, and figure this out in a minute. So I turn around, and I'm grabbing stuff out of my pack. And I turn back around, and he's full-on seizing, like clenched up, drooling at the mouth, like just full-on seizing.
Really?
Yeah, so I get on the radio. I have a bunch of guys down below that were spotting. And I was like, hey, I need guys up here now. See if we can get a chopper. And I'm just like, shit, I can't get him out of there. The ledge we were on, I knew I couldn't carry him out of there myself.
No shit.
So I'm like.
And how close are you to a hospital?
Probably an hour and a half to.
Once you got him off the mountain.
Once we got him off the mountain, hour and a half, 2 hours to one in Mexico, 3-4 hours from one in the States.
So he's committed.
Yeah, like, so that's what I was like, get a chopper. If we can, like, we can get a chopper, like, get it. And he.
How long did he seize for?
It was a while. Probably 30, 45 seconds. But a lot of this.
That's an eternity.
Yeah, I'm on the radio and just looking at him. And I turn back around, and he like got out of it, and he starts grabbing his rifle. So he grabs his rifle, and I'm like, "Hey, Mike, you all right? What's going on?" And he turns his rifle to me and starts pulling the trigger. Like, pointed it right at my head and just pulling the trigger. And he's sitting there fumbling with the safety. He couldn't get it off safe. So I grab the rifle, I throw him on the ground, and then I just set the rifle down. He gets up and starts swinging, and then he just sits down and he's out of it. And probably after about 5-10 minutes, I'm able to get him to eat, and he starts to drink. And I'm like, Mike, do you know where you're at? Do you know what's going on? You know.
Holy crap.
And he's just, like, gone, like, no idea. And then probably after about 30 minutes, I was like, I'm still waiting for the guys to get up there. But he's, like, he's out of it, but he's not seizing. He's like, I can tell he's kind of coming back too. I'm like, finally, hey, Mike, where are we? He goes, well, we're sheep hunting. I was like, okay, well, at least.
And we're coming back. We got something.
And I'm like, do you know what we're doing? And he's like, well, we're set up on sheep. I was like, yeah. I was like, do you know what just happened? And he goes, well, I'm trying to kill a sheep, aren't I? Like, had no recollection of it whatsoever.
No recollection of pointing a gun right at your face and pulling the trigger.
No idea whatsoever. And at that point,
I'd be like, we're done.
Well,
we're done.
The sheep were still there.
Shut up.
They're still there.
Did you put them back on?
I put them back on the sheep.
You're like, okay, you're good? You're okay?
Yeah, got him back on the sheep.
Holy shit.
And the rams, like, knew something was up.
I would imagine at this point, yeah.
Because I wasn't quiet. Like, he wasn't quiet. And they're just kind of single file working up. And the big ram, I wanted him to shoot perfectly broadside. And I'm like, are you on him? And he's like, yep, dead on him. Like, that time he was, like, on it. And I was like, all right, I'm ready whenever you are. He's like, what did he say? He's like, prepare to watch him die or something like this. And he shoots and he blows a choy up. You know, the choy cactus. Blows a choy up like 2 feet in front of the sheep and just blows cactus all over the sheep. It's stuck into him.
Oh, no.
I'm like, well, reload. And the ram goes up again, and they're kind of working up. And I don't, like, they're kind of all mixed in, so I have to be careful when I tell them to shoot. And he shoots again, and he, like, barely clips the back leg on this ram. The bullet hits, the ram wasn't near any others, but hits, ricochets up, and went like an inch below the belly of another ram. And I'm like, whew. Like if that other ram would have dropped, that would have been bad. So that ram, like he ran up the hill, but they're still, 400 yards. And they're all just standing there looking at us. They're all stacked up, and I just didn't feel comfortable telling them to shoot.
Yeah.
So we sit there and watch them, and I'm just hoping they'll separate. The ram goes up and over with all the other ones. And the other guys get up there. And another guide and I ended up going up over the top, trying to see if we could find him, but he couldn't make it up there, obviously.
Yeah.
And we never did find that ram. And in Mexico, like, so we are paying the ranch owners per animal.
Okay.
It is for sheep. It's not a small amount. Like you see the prices of sheep, the ranch owners are making the majority of the money.
Really?
Yeah. So it's at that point, it's up to the ranch owner's discretion if he wants to let them hunt or not.
Okay.
And
because in normal rules are if you draw blood, you're done. That's it.
But we knew it wasn't a fatal hit.
Okay.
But yeah, normally like if you draw blood, you're done.
Yeah.
So we kind of like talked it out with the ranch owner. He's like, I'll let you keep hunting, but if you kill another one, he wanted X amount more. Which it was, I can't remember what it was, but it was reasonable.
Okay.
And they're like, yeah, fine. So we ended up hunting the rest of the hunt, like, or not the rest of the hunt. It got like day 9, and his stepdad was like, I'm done. I want to go home.
Yeah.
But we'd been on a lot of rams,
So
but
you had a
they're
lot of
like,
opportunity.
yeah, they were just, I mean, they were rams that I could have shot off the hood of the truck, some of them.
Oh, okay.
But it just with him, like we needed a slam dunk.
Yep.
And he couldn't hike up to him, and so we even gave him the option to come back again.
Yeah.
Later in the season, but his stepdad's like, nah, he goes, maybe next year. And he's our only hunter that went home without a ram. But I mean, he had a wound loss, and
yeah. That's rough though.
yeah. But then we ended up killing that same ram. My last sheep hunter of the year, we killed him. So I went back and I found the ram like 2 weeks later, right where he was. I knew it wasn't fatal. And then this year I had 2 sheep hunters there. I looked for him with the first hunter, couldn't find him, and we ended up killing another really good ram. And then my second sheep hunter there this year went right back to where we had seen him the year before, found him.
Right there.
He got in on him, killed him.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Good ram.
Yeah, good 11-year-old ram. He's, Mexico, like, you're realistically, for free range sheep, you're looking at a 160 sheep.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll get 170s, but
You say free range, so there's a lot of sheep down there. Those giant ones are coming out of high fence
yeah,
areas.
yeah, like, and a lot of them are raised in pens, then kicked out. So if you see guys consistently killing like high 70s, mid 70s, high 70s, is 180 sheep,
Yeah.
chances are they're turned out rams.
Really?
Yep.
And they just stay on those ranches because they're so big?
Yeah, it depends. Like, I don't know exactly how it works. I've heard, like, of some guys that'll have a high fence at the base of a mountain range, and they'll have, a mountain range that doesn't have any other mountains around it. So then they'll raise them in that high fence, then they'll kick them out,
And they have nowhere to go.
and then they're just going to be on that mountain.
Yeah.
So yeah, what we look for, we tell guys, our biggest thing is we want old sheep. We're trying to kill 10-plus-year-old rams. Whether that's, a high 50s ram or, a high 60s ram, it's going to be in that range.
But it's going to have the age to it.
It's going to have the age. Yeah. Most of the sheep we kill, they don't, like, I think 2 of the sheep we killed this last year didn't have any teeth left on their bottom jaw.
See, that's where a lot of people, I feel, get lost, and they chase the inches instead of the age.
Age is cool.
Age to me is age and character, because a lot of times that character comes with age.
Yeah, for sure.
And they want this beautiful, slick, like 4x4, whatever it is, and I'm like, God, that some old, ancient, they got that white face on them, they got all scarred up, ears are split, like, that's just all age. I love age, and that's hard sometimes to convince a client, like, hey, like, we got to give this deer another year. It's a young 180-inch deer, and they're like, I'll shoot right now. I'm like, yeah, but that's going to be a absolute hammer next year and the year after that.
Yeah.
If you just give them a little time.
Especially like down in Mexico, we'll have 3-4-year-old deer that are, 180, 190, and trying to tell a hunter, hey, you can't shoot that.
Yeah.
Like, most of our clients understand it,
For
and
sure.
they know what we're doing, and they've seen our track record, and it works. But you have some guys that are like, I paid for this hunt.
Oh yeah.
This is my hunt.
I'm gonna shoot what I want.
I had a guy that we had a 5x5 that was like a 180 buck, but I knew he was a 4-year-old deer, and he wanted to hunt him so bad. I didn't tell him about the deer at all, but I think it was one of our drivers showed him a trail camera picture.
Oh.
I was like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Because he saw that deer and he's like, that's the deer we're
Once
hunting.
they become fixated on it and they know it's in there, but also a lot of times these outfitters, not just the shittier ones, they'll show the guys pictures of deer that don't either shot the year prior or already dead that season, and they're just to get these guys kind of hooked on a certain animal, because they get really excited over pictures.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And then their mind, that's it. That's the only animal that they're after. So.
Yeah. So he saw that deer, and that is the deer he wanted.
Yeah.
And I just, like, the Spencer even greenlit it because it turned into kind of a shit show.
Oh, okay.
But for me, I couldn't do it. Especially the way they approached it. Like, we had a dinner that was like, the guy's like, I paid for this fucking hunt. I'm killing what I want. And I was just like, I can't do it. And we ended up he killed a high 80s. It was only an 18-inch wide deer, but he was a high 80s deer.
Really?
Just crazy too. It was just an awesome buck, and he was stoked. But that deer made it one more year, and we killed him at 210. It just,
people don't realize that too. Especially, I had a guy, and I have pictures of it. It's wild. I had a client. We had this deer come out in the road. It was like a 4 or 5-year-old, muley comes out. He's got these little devil kickers and all this crazy character, and the client's like grabbing his rifle about to bail out of the truck, and I'm like, no. One, we're on a fucking main county road, like, not gonna happen. But two, I'm like, that deer needs another year or two, and he's like, no way. And I'm like, 100%. We ended up killing that deer the next season, and it went like 233, and it was within 100 yards of where we passed it the year prior. And I was showing, then we started comparing pictures of the year, because I filmed the deer the year prior in the road while his does were crossing. And he just stood there and looked at me, and I'm 20 yards from it in the road. I mean, you could match everything. It just blew up from that 4 to 5 range into the next year, and it was just an unbelievable deer. But it's like a lot of guys don't realize, like, give it one more year. I mean, you don't know what it's going to turn into, especially if they got a good protein source. It's a good, a good season, a good spring on them. So they got a lot of feed, and I mean, those things will just put on some inches.
That's one thing I really enjoy about Mexico. Now that I've been down there 5 years now, is watching deer year to year. Yeah. And, seeing what they can turn into and recognizing deer. And, we killed a buck that was 40 inches wide this last year that I watched him from, he was like a 23, 24-inch wide 2-point. Really? To the next year, he was like a 34 or 35-inch wide 3x4. And then this last season, he just blew up, and
it's cool. It's cool to watch.
And, like,
or you find a deer, you're like, oh, I remember this one from. And you go through and start scrolling through, and you find them from the year prior, and you're like, holy shit! Like,
yeah. A lot of them keep pretty much the same look to them. Yep. But then there's some deer. Spencer's nuts with it. The owner of the outfit. Yeah. He'll send me pictures of deer. He's like, you recognize this buck? No. And then he'll send me a picture from the year before, and I was like, that is not the same deer, because it'll be completely different. Yep. And he's like, well, look at this, and this. And I'm like, holy shit, you're right. And it's fun just to see what they do year to year. I enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, and then especially if you're managing them and doing the right, I've worked with some really good outfits that, they're really strict about age, and they didn't play. You get 1 or 2 strikes, it's like, okay, if you can't kill mature deer, you're out. Yeah. But it's once you, okay. Once you start seeing those deer, and then you're there for several years, and you start watching them put on the size, you're like, it makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense. And you're like, okay, I understand it now. Because if you're killing that deer, it's like, cool. I mean, the client's going to be happy, but, why not wait for it to just blow up and put your name on the map, So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll occasionally have a young deer get killed.
It happens.
And it's not the end of the world. Yeah. Like, Mexico, sometimes you have all the time in the world. Sometimes it's real quick opportunities. Yep. And you, as a guide, you have to be able to make a split-second decision, and shit happens. Yep. It is what it is. And to the client, that's the biggest deer they've ever killed. and like you got to be stoked, but inside you're just
For
like,
sure.
oh, it makes you sick.
You got to make the call or send the picture like, hey, listen, before you.
Yeah.
It was quick. Great deer. Could have needed another year or two, but yeah, you never let the client know. But inside, you're like kicking yourself, like, God, that would have been a hammer here in a
Yep.
couple of years. But this guy's over here just calling every friend and
Yep.
calling the wife. You're like, all right, like it is what it is.
Yeah, that's all it is. It
Yep.
is what it is.
It is
There's
what it
nothing
is.
you can do about
Part
it.
of the sport.
Yep. So, like I said, for the most part, we try to let them get 6.
Yeah.
There's some deer we kill at 5, depending on what the surrounding ranches are doing.
Yep.
You know what's going on, but it happens on some of the ranches that we want to let them get 6. Sometimes we kill a young deer.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. But yeah, down there, I feel like if you can let them hit 6, that's when you
they
really
blow up.
generally that I feel like that's when you really see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we've had deer that have put on 50 inches in a year.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Insane. So shifting gears back to stateside. Actually, just international, wherever. Where's if you could hunt one country, what's your favorite place that you would go back to right now?
That's such a hard question.
It is.
I feel like okay, so as far as like the whole culture and like the acceptance of hunting and like all that, Greenland.
Really?
Because most of the time when I go international and I'm traveling, you talk to people in the airport and whatnot, I generally don't mention that I'm hunting because you never know. So when you're in Europe and traveling, generally, hunters aren't looked at too favorably.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty quiet about what I'm doing for the most part. Greenland is like a hunting society. Like
Really?
I think they said from like 12 years and older, you can go buy guns at the store, no background checks, no nothing. You can go buy cans and like everybody has
everybody's suppressed
suppressors
over
and
there,
like
yeah.
everything and like it's just so widely accepted,
Yep.
and that was cool.
Yeah.
Being in a place that like
Where were you hunting in Greenland? Muskox?
muskox, yeah.
How was that?
It was a lot of fun.
I've heard the muskox can go one of two ways. I heard it's like the adventure's fun, the traveling's fun, the culture's the food. This goes for I guess Alaska too, but like the actual hunt itself isn't
It's pretty cut and dry.
the most sporty.
So you see a lot of the hunts up in the Arctic where they'll run them down on snowmobiles.
Yeah.
In Greenland, it's too mountainous to do that.
Okay.
So you actually have to stalk them.
Okay.
And when we went, the snow was really crunchy. So, I mean, we did have to put in some work to get into bow range.
Yeah.
But it's still, like, you're going to get a muskox.
Okay.
We went and we ended up getting a camp at like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And we spotted 3 bulls up on the hill above camp. We worked around, tried to get on them. We busted them at like 200 yards. They ran off. We found them again, stalked in on them again. We killed 2 bulls out of that herd with bows.
Okay.
Like, so exactly, like the adventure, all that is incredible. Just where you're at. It's like after we kill those 2 bulls, we're standing there. It's one of those times you just got to take a step back and you're like, holy shit,
Like we're here.
We're here. Like I force myself to do that at times because like a lot of the times it's just I get into the routine of doing things, and I feel like I don't appreciate it for how I should.
For sure. Well, you have pressure, spent money to be there. You're there for a reason, but at the same time, like you forget where you're at sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been there for sure.
And like after we were standing over, our 2 bulls, it's just like, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like the hunting aspect of it, it's not challenging.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna paint it for something it isn't. But the whole experience was awesome.
So Greenland, huh?
Yeah, but like just for the culture around it.
Yeah.
But then, like, as far as opportunities, I've only hunted brown bear in Russia, but I feel like Russia, if things weren't the way they are politically, I feel like Russia could be like the top hunting destination in the world.
You just got back.
Yeah.
From Russia. Okay,
yeah.
let's jump into this then. Russia.
Yeah. Russia.
First off, what possessed you to go to Russia to kill? And they're the Browns, Grizzlies. What are they considered?
Brown bears.
Okay. So you guys is what, 3 of you? You, Spencer?
4 of us.
Okay.
4 of us.
So I know one of the guys on that group along with you, but I saw some of these pictures, man, and I've heard stories. I want to jump into Russia. I feel like it's making its way onto my like bucket list of
Yeah.
like, oh, because I'm a bear guy,
Yeah.
love bears, and so this is like I don't know if I'd call it the mecca of bears, but I mean, fuck, you guys shot some giant bears. So
Yeah.
let's get into this. So Russia, how was this, especially in this political state we're at now? Obviously, they think we're backing Ukraine.
Yeah.
That whole shit show. So I'm sure that you're getting that side of things plus a foreign country. There's a lot of tension right now
Yeah.
in the world, and you guys are just like, let's go to Russia and kill bears.
Yep. Yeah. So it was a hunt that my buddy JJ had booked a few years ago.
Okay.
I think he booked it like the week before the war broke out.
Oh, okay.
So he puts down the deposits on
Yeah.
4 hunts, and then shit pops off.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody went over there for like a year or two. And then this year I found out they're starting to put it together, and one of the guys backed out. And with me, like if there's a hunt and I know there's an opening,
Yeah.
I'm going to jump on it if it's something I want to do. So, and brown bear with a bow has always been like top of my bucket list. Like you, I'm a bear guy. I hunt bears all over. Like I do 2, 3, 4 bear hunts a year.
Yeah.
And so like when I found out that there's an opportunity to go, I was all over it. And my family, friends, everybody was like, what the hell are you doing?
Don't
They're
go.
like, you're going to be in some work camp in Siberia, or you're going to get sent to the front lines. Like, you're not coming back.
Yeah.
But I probably should be more cautious than I am, but I don't get scared about traveling abroad.
Okay.
Like, a lot of the places I've been are places you're not supposed to go.
Yeah.
I just don't have issues for the most part.
Okay.
So the first step was getting our visas. We had to fill out a bunch of paperwork and send off our passports to DC, to the consulate. And for Spencer and I, we had our Greenland trip. So we couldn't send in our passports till we were back from Greenland.
Oh, okay.
So when we got back from Greenland, like we're getting pretty tight on time. And I sent mine in. Luckily, mine went smooth. Spencer's, so the outfitter has to send you a invitation letter, and that's just saying you have a reason to go to Russia, basically. Yeah. And they didn't put his middle name on his invitation letter. So he sends it in, thinks everything's good. Mine gets approved, and he's like, "What the hell?" Looks it up, and they had just put a hold on it. So he gets hold of the outfitter, gets a new invitation letter, overnights it into him. John, our other buddy, JJ, they all get theirs. Spencer still doesn't have his. So clock's ticking.
Yeah, time's coming up.
Yeah. We left for the airport at 1 p.m. He ran down the FedEx truck at 12:45 to get his visa.
No.
Yeah. He ran down the FedEx truck, got his visa, hopped in his truck, and then we went.
Oh, my. So you literally.
Like down to the wire.
Yeah, okay.
So then we flew to Amsterdam, then Istanbul.
How long were you in Amsterdam?
Just for a layover.
Okay, so you didn't get to party at all?
Yeah,
then?
no, I've been through there, but I haven't been there. You know.
Yeah.
Then we went to Istanbul, spent an evening in Istanbul.
How was that?
It was cool. Like, I'm sure there's a lot more interesting things that you can do. We just kind of went down by the water, ate dinner, and it was fun.
Okay.
But we really didn't do much.
Yeah.
And then the next morning we had a 6 o'clock flight to Moscow. And we get up, get on our flight, everything's going well. And then we land in Moscow and we have to go through passport control.
Okay.
And I had talked to another hunter that had been there, and he's like, hey, just so you know, you're not going to go right through passport control. He's like, they're going to hold you for a couple hours, and then they'll send you on your way. But we had like an 8-hour layover, so we're like, yeah, we're good. So we go to passport control, and there's all the different booths, and we all split up and go to a different one. And then one by one, they take our passports and lead us, over to a seating area, and we sit there. And we're sitting there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then they lead us all into this room, and we're like, okay, sweet. Like, we're going to get our passports back, and we're good.
Yeah.
and they made us all of us give them our phones, and like they wanted passwords, and so they could go through everything on our phones.
Really?
Yeah. So
How was that?
I had heard they might do it, so like I went through my phone, like as much as I could.
Swiped all your dick pics off.
Yeah,
there, huh?
yeah. They didn't need to see the angry inch.
You're prepared for it. You're like not ended up on freaking internet because of these Russians.
So they get our phones, and then they lead us back to the seating area. And there's no clocks on the walls. There's nothing.
Yeah.
We don't have our phones. We don't have anything. And we sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait. And like we'd been there at that point for like 4 or 5 hours. And we're like, our flight's getting close, you know?
Yeah.
So then they lead Spencer back and interview him, and he's in there for like an hour and a half. And like, I'm starting to get nervous. He's in there for so long, and like, I'm trying to figure out what room he's in. And
are they showing you like hostility, or are they kind of just short with you?
They're short with us, but not like any outright hostility.
Okay.
But they take him in, interview him, and the questions they asked during the interviews were like, what are your views on the war? Have you ever been military? Have you ever done mercenary work? What guns do you own? What do you do for work? Who did you vote for? Just like everything. And
That's crazy.
yeah, so they had him for about an hour and a half, and like we were all getting nervous. He'd been gone so long.
Yeah.
And then he comes out and he goes, "Oh, they haven't taken you guys in yet?" So we're still sitting there.
You're like, no.
Yeah. And then they end up taking JJ in, do the same thing. And then all of a sudden this guy comes out with, like at this point, it'd been probably 6 hours. All of a sudden this guy comes out with our passports and he's like, all right. And we're like, we don't have our phones. And we're like, we're not leaving without our phones. And he's getting pissed, wanting us to go through, and we don't want to leave.
Yeah.
And we go knock on the door where they have our phones. And they're like, we need more time. And they ended up taking like another couple hours and finally gave us our phones back, gave us our passports. And to this point, we'd missed our flight.
No.
Yep.
So you were there for longer than 8 hours. So
Yeah.
You had an 8 hour later. So they took over 8 hours to process you guys in Moscow.
Yep.
Damn.
And then after we get through passport control, we go downstairs to pick up our bags. And we all three had like the big Sitka duffels.
Yeah.
And we all had our bows on the bottom and clothes on top. And we grab our bags, we make it through like 20 yards through a set of double doors, and then there's scanners. And JJ goes through one, Spencer and I go through the other, and they see our bows. And immediately red flags, you know, which I talked to the booking agent, I talked to everybody, and they're like, yeah, bows are just fine. I don't think they had an issue with any other hunters. It's just we drew the short end of the stick, and so they have us start emptying our bags, and like we all had a pile of cash for tips and pay for the hunt, and I had mine like stuffed into my boot, my carry-on.
Yep.
So he's having me pull my boots out, and I just pulled the tongue down so he didn't see it, and like set that aside. But Spencer and JJ, they'd found their cash, and like they have it spread out across all the tables, and you know, $100 bills, Turkish liras, and rubles, and they're like we are the sideshow. Like everybody coming through is just like looking at us.
Yep. And these Americans.
Yeah. So they count JJ's money and send him on his way with his bow. Mm-hmm. And then Spencer and I, they keep looking at our bows. They're just going back and forth, back and forth. And finally, they're like, we can't determine the energy that these bows produce, which I kept showing them 70 pounds on the limb.
Yeah.
And they're like, we can't determine the energy they produce. We need to see if they're legal or not. So
Russia has legal rules on bows.
Apparently.
You could buy an RPG as a child, and they're worried about the draw on your bow.
So they have us, bag our bows up, and they lead us into this back room.
So you still haven't even gotten out of the airport yet?
Still haven't made it, like, we've made it nowhere.
Jeez.
And Spencer and I get led to this room, and they sit there and they have like 37 different papers. I don't know how many, but it was a lot of different documents. And they're like, sign this, sign this. And I was like, I don't know what this is saying. Like, I could be telling you I'll give you my kidney for all I know. And they're trying to like translate it, and I'm getting pissed. And like, I pop off, and I'm like, well, shit, I'm in Russia. I can't do that. So we end up sitting there for 4 hours.
So you're in this airport for 12 hours.
12 hours. And they confiscate our bows.
No.
JJ made it through just fine with his, but Spencer and I got our bows taken away. And so we'd been, up for a day and a half, whatever, at this point. We hadn't eaten since before our flight, like 16, 18 hours, whatever. So we make it out, and JJ and John, they had gone right through, so they didn't have to sit the 4 hours that we did. So they had worked on changing our flights around. Spencer and I went, there's a TGI Fridays. We just went and drank and ate dinner.
No shit.
Yeah.
The TGI Fridays?
The TGI Fridays.
In Moscow,
in
Russia?
Moscow.
Right next to the McDonald's and Taco Bell.
Yeah. So we go and we eat dinner, and we're just exhausted.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
And we get a hotel lined up, go to the hotel, and I'm texting the outfitter, and I was like, hey, I'm not going to shoot a bear with a rifle. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Like, brown bear with a bow has always been my dream. And he goes, well, let me see what I can do. I don't know, like, how, but all of a sudden he rounds up a 60-pound elite compound.
Really?
Yeah. And he's like, will this work? I was like, we didn't know the draw length or anything. And the reason JJ still had his bow, but JJ's has like a 32-inch draw length.
Yeah.
So like wouldn't work.
Not gonna pass behind your head.
So we're like, yeah, but he sends us a picture, and there's like one arrow.
Oh.
And we're like, man, we're gonna need more arrows than that. And somehow in Moscow, he scrounges up like these Walmart arrows. And
so you're in Moscow, you're in Russia with a confiscated bow. They find you a loner that has one arrow and some Walmart piece together arrows. You're supposed to be going on a grizzly hunt.
Yeah.
Oh,
so the bow was already in Kamchatka. The arrows, a guy brought them to us at the hotel, and then he drove us to the airport the next day for our flight. But then we have to go back through security, and I'm like, shit, we just got like stuff confiscated yesterday. They took all my arrows, all my broadheads, and everything, and I'm supposed to go through security again with more arrows.
Yeah.
So I just shoved them at the bottom of my bag, and like luckily nothing happened.
Oh my God.
And then we get on our flight, and we had a 9.5-hour flight to Kamchatka.
Are you just over it at this point?
Oh, ready.
You're just like ready to like, okay, if there's one more thing, we're out of here.
Yeah, like honestly, so when we got held up for 4 hours when they took our bow, I was like, I just want to go home, which isn't like me. Like normally I'll deal with anything.
Yeah. I could probably, not including the flight, you've been held up for 12 hours and haven't eaten in 16. And I would 100% be more than ready to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, and we were done. But I think we looked at it, and our next flight to Kamchatka was sooner than any flight we could get back to Istanbul.
Okay.
So we're like, well, fuck it, we'll go on a bear hunt. So we make it to Kamchatka. We go and we shoot the bow. Luckily, Spencer and I are like the same draw length, and this bow's, I feel like we didn't even know, but probably 28 and a half, right where we needed. It shoots like way high, and they didn't want us to change the sights because like it was set up with these 700 grain like Valkyrie broadheads with the 100 grain insert and 175 grain broadheads, and they brought us those arrows and then like Walmart Carbon Express broadheads. But luckily, Spencer, they didn't confiscate. He had one pack of Slick Tricks left.
Oh, okay.
So we shot it, and like you had to aim like 18 inches low at 20 yards.
Oh my God, this is just a recipe for a disaster.
Yeah. So we, we make it to camp, and Spencer and JJ are up first, and they get on their bears, and JJ has his bow and all that, so he ends up killing his, and then Spencer gets on his bear, and I think he had to shoot him twice, but he made it work.
Yeah. So you got it done with this,
with this loner bow,
Yeah.
cheap arrows.
which just adds to the story at this point.
Yeah, so after everything was all said and done, we had killed 7 bears, and we were reusing broadheads,
No.
piecing them together. We had a slick trick that we'd shot that had been through 3 different bears.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's a great plug.
yeah, no kidding.
You know?
We made it work. I mean, at that point, what else can you do? I mean, we could have rifle
And
hunted.
you guys are shooting these things, I mean, very, very close range. I don't know if it was you or Spencer that posted the video of, I think it was you guys, that bear just comes out from that bush. I mean, it looks almost point blank.
Yeah, that was JJ's bear. He shot at like 12 feet.
That has got to be, are you guys all together, or are they taking 2 guys out at a time?
Generally
or-
2 guys at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wasn't on that one.
Yeah.
But you know, all of our bears were within 25 yards max. You know,
On the ground with the freaking bear. These things, and they're massive too. I mean, you guys are getting, what, 10 footers, it looked like.
yeah, they're giant bears. I mean, I don't realistically spring weights on them are probably, you know, 600 to 900 pounds.
That's a big animal.
Yeah, in the fall they'd be, you know, 1,200 probably.
How were the guides? Did you trust them? Like, were they to back you up, or you kind of felt like if they turn, like you're kind of on your own?
There was one guy that was there part of the time that had this old Russian. It looked like a Dragunov without a scope. I
Okay.
don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
like him, he seemed like he meant business. The other guy, he had this 300 Weatherby, and he was good, but he was more worried about filming everything, which
Okay.
got some really good video.
Can
But
imagine.
in that picture JJ posted of him shooting that bear at 12 feet, the gun, the rifle, the backup rifle is laying at the bear's feet.
So you guys shoot this bear, and the rifle's between you and the bear,
Yeah, it is like right next to the bear.
and nobody was like
Nobody had a rifle. He's the guide has
more worried about filming than he
Yeah.
was backing you guys up.
the guide has his iPhone.
Oh my God!
Like if that bear charges, there's nothing.
And you guys didn't have any of that. Have you ever had bears charge you before?
Yeah,
I mean, you've run into a lot of bears.
yeah. I had one. It's been probably 3 years ago in Montana. I had a sow and a cub, like
Blacks or grizzlies?
blacks.
Okay.
Like a yearling cub, you know, and I got in close on them, and then they saw me and got off the road, and I started calling on a cow out call just to see if she'd come back.
Yeah.
And this sow comes barreling out of the brush at like 5 feet. She sees me and locks it up, and I'm trying to grab my rifle.
No kidding.
If she would have wanted to, she would have
committed,
had me.
yeah.
Like there's no way I was getting the shot off.
No kidding.
Yeah, and then that same hunt, I ended up killing my bear, and I'd killed him like right before dark. I was about 3 miles in, and my cousin had walked in with me on the same logging road, but then we split up, and he didn't see anything, and he wasn't sure where I was at, but I was going up after this bear.
Yeah.
Ended up killing him right before dark, and I can't remember why I didn't just skin him out right then, but I just gutted him out. I put my shirt over him, like my sweaty shirt, just made me feel like maybe another bear wouldn't come eat him if I had
Yeah.
my scent on it. And then I start walking out, and I'm walking out in the dark, and I had service where I killed the bear, and I told my cousin I'd kill the bear, and all of a sudden I hear rustling behind me. I was like, oh, it's probably just a deer, an elk, whatever. And then it's following me. And then I hear it start, I start making noise, and I hear it start popping its jaw. And I don't have a light. I had my cell phone light. And so, you know, I'm doing the whole hey bear.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And I keep walking, and I can hear this thing following me. And, like, bears don't really scare me. I wasn't worried about him eating me. But
Yeah.
so I open up Spotify, and for some reason none of my downloads were there, but I've been listening to DMX. This is the last thing I had listened to. So I start playing X Gonna Give It to You, like blaring it, and I'm singing it. And I end up running into my cousin on this logging road, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? It's like, there's bear following me. Don't worry about it.
Come running around the corner. Like, I can only imagine that.
So I had that, and then I killed a bull in Utah in a burn. I killed an elk a few years ago on the muzzleloader hunt.
Yeah.
And I had quartered them out. I was supposed to have horses lined up. I killed them like 6 miles in. Well, the horses fell through.
Ugh.
So I don't think I packed anything out. I just hung them all, got out of there. And once horses fell through, I had to go back in. And like I was by myself.
That's miserable.
And I did like 25 miles one day, but I'd gone back in. It was like 1 in the morning. And I get in there and same thing, you know, run into a bear, starts popping its jaws. And he never charged me or anything, but he just didn't want to leave.
Yep.
But he ended up eating a back strap and a front shoulder,
Dang.
which I wasn't too
bad
sad
about it. There's less weight you got to pack out of
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You're like, here you go.
Yeah, I really haven't had any instances with bears where I've been scared.
Have you had any incidences where you were scared? Where you were like any, you go to, I mean, you've spent some time in Alaska. I mean, even just weather, you had any close calls, like come to Jesus moments?
I'm sure I have. I'm just like sheep hunting. I slipped and fell on my last sheep hunt this last year.
Really?
And caught myself right before going over like a
Really?
150-foot drop.
That happens actually quite often.
Yeah.
I mean, guys fall all the time.
Yeah,
All the time.
it started pouring on us, and we got on the sheep, got him killed. Well, he ended up hitting him back, and we had to chase him way up into the cliffs and got him killed. And then the ranch owner was down below, and he's like, "Hey, we want to be with you." So I went down, and he's like, "Well, where is he at?" And like he was high enough, he was up in the fog that he couldn't even see where he's at. And he's like, "Oh, he's up there." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, I'm not going up there."
After you climbed
After
back
I
up.
went all the way
Oh,
down.
God.
So then I went back up and around and tried. I thought I had a better way to get there.
Yeah.
And ended up just going cliff to cliff. And that's that time. I've had kind of 2 instances with that with sheep. Really, the only times that I've had like real close calls, or I guess when that guy almost shot me, and then just it would have been slip and fall type stuff.
Yeah.
But never like an animal being aggressive or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with like military checkpoints, stuff like that. Like it's all pretty straightforward.
basic shit,
yeah, it's the only time I felt like I was actually in danger is probably slip and falls.
Which is, I mean, man, it happens often.
Yeah,
It happens a lot more than people think, especially in Alaska. And then you slip up there. I mean, it could be 3,000 feet before you're even considering hitting the bottom in some of those areas.
In Kyrgyzstan, when I hunted ibex over there, I killed my ibex. I was shooting from one rock outcropping to the other, and it was just steep snow, like just there's no rocks, just snow, and just damn near straight up and down, just slope in between us.
Yep.
And going across that slope was terrifying.
Really?
And like if you looked at it, you wouldn't think it would have been anything, but it's just ice and like straight up and down. And I got over to my ibex and I had to shoot him again. And I shot him again and he started tumbling and he went like 700 yards before he stopped, just endoed. And then
That's steep, huh?
Oh, it's so steep.
I got a video of my buddy Jeter. They were hunting one of the stands for tar. I believe it was Tur.
Yeah.
Big horn ramp, not the New Zealand tar or whatever. Anyways, he's got a video of him walking across, it's like a goat trail, straight vertical, and he's got a GoPro on his helmet, and they give you a stick, and you like lean into the side of this mountain, like sheer vertical, but he looks with his GoPro, and there's no bottom.
Yeah.
Like no, and they're like, dude, if you fall, like you're there. Like there's no getting you out, and like they just give you like this hardwood walking stick, and you just put it against the hill, the mountain, and lean into it, and but you literally on a goat trail enough to like put one foot in front of the other. And then he said him and only one other guy out of the whole camp were willing to like go to this other side of the mountain range, and that's what it took to get over there. And he's like, dude, it was like pucker factor 1,000. Like there was no bottom. And he's like, if that gravel would just give out, or the side of this mountain just gave out, he's like, you're going to the bottom.
The terrain over there is just, it's insane. Like, so I was in the Tian Shan Mountains. I was about.
Man, you've got some really cool places.
I really have. I've been really, really fortunate. Like, that's I don't feel like I feel like I'm a pretty average hunter,
Yeah.
but I feel like if I want to do something, I will research it to death,
Okay.
and I'll figure out how to make it affordable for me.
Okay.
A lot of people like see the hunts I do, and they're like, "Oh, someday, someday." Nothing drives me, like pisses me off more than somebody saying someday. Like if you really want to do it,
Yeah.
you can figure out how to make it work. Which, obviously there's not a lot of people that want to hunt as much as I do, which is fine. But everybody's like, I'll go to Montana on a bear hunt. Everybody's like, oh, I want to go. I want to go. So I will line everything up. I will spoon feed them a hunt, basically. Buy your tag. I'll take you. Be here, be here, be here. And people won't do it. For me, if I find a hunt I want to do,
You'd make it happen.
I will sit there at night and I will look for hours and hours and hours, and I'll
What are you searching for?
So like just whatever I want to hunt, I'll Google it and I'll look at old forums. I'll try to find reports, and then I'll start trying to get numbers from guys that have hunted there, and I'll call those guys up. Hey, how'd your hunt go? And I will just, research any way possible to figure out how to do a hunt. And I've been really fortunate to find or to be able to do a lot of these hunts that, most people think are way more expensive than they are, and a lot of the times they are. But if you do some research, there's affordable ways to do them.
Got it.
But also, like, the biggest complaint I hear from hunters now is lack of opportunity. Public land hunting is crowded.
Oh yeah.
And drawing tags is getting more tough. But if you really want to hunt, there's opportunities.
For sure.
Most of the western states have over-the-counter bear tags. New Mexico has over-the-counter Barbary tags. There's turkey tags, there's elk tags, there's deer tags. If you really want to hunt, you're going to hunt.
For sure. I think now it's becoming the fad animals. Your muleys, your elk, and that's what everybody feels like they can chase. And there's so many other opportunities.
There really is. So like deer and elk, I don't get to hunt that much because like I'm guiding.
Yeah.
Like last year, I killed a bull in Idaho. But for the most part,
Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado. For the most part, I don't have much time to hunt in the fall.
Yeah.
Like, I think last year in Utah, I hunted one day for deer on the extended archery. So I just find opportunities that I can do in the spring.
Yeah.
And
Is that why you do a lot of abroad hunting? Is just because obviously you're booked all fall? With
yeah,
clients?
that's a big part of it. And honestly, it's a lot more affordable than a
deer.
lot of hunts in the U.S.
Really?
Yeah, like you look at the cost of a mule deer hunt now, like a good mule deer hunt, 20, 30 grand isn't out of the picture, really.
I mean, they're starting at 12, 13, 12, 15 now.
Yeah.
For 170, 180 deer in a lot of places.
Yep.
I mean, you're like, God damn.
Yeah. Elk hunts, 30, 40 grand for an elk tag isn't out of the picture right now.
Oh, God, no.
And I went to Kyrgyzstan and killed an ibex for $5 grand.
Really?
Yep.
Favorite country you could ever go back to right now? I mean, I know we talked about Greenland, but like, one thing that it pops to your head that you just had the time of your life.
Oh man.
Has there just been some good ones?
Really like Russia. Like
really? Besides the airport?
Yeah, besides the political stuff, like I truly I can't talk like I'm an expert on Russia because my experience is very limited just in one portion of Russia. But from the people I know that have hunted there and the opportunities, and I feel like Russia, from what I know about it, really would be one of the top hunting destinations in the world.
What do they have? I mean, they have everything. They got giant moose, right?
Moose, bear, snow sheep. They have tur. They have ibex.
They got ibex,
They
huh?
roe deer, boar. They have so many, like, because Russia, look, it's just giant.
Yeah.
Like in the Far East, you have your snow sheep, your bears, your moose, and then different mountain ranges. You're gonna have your ibex, your tur, like
everything.
So I really want to go back to Russia. It's going to be interesting to see what happens politically and just how that goes. But yeah, that was awesome. And then Kyrgyzstan really was a pretty special place as well. Like I ended up going on that hunt by myself, and just the mountains that you're in. So we I flew, Istanbul is kind of over that part of the world. Everything's through
the hub.
Istanbul, yeah. So I flew Istanbul to a town called Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. And then I had a 5-hour drive with this old man in a hatchback.
I've heard of some of these drives to get to some of these areas. I mean, I have buddies that they've driven for 2 straight days.
Yeah.
Like dirt mountain roads, like cliffs that you can't see the bottom on, and you're just like, it's never ending.
Yeah.
How is that on the body?
So, well, the first part was paved. It wasn't too bad.
Okay.
I'm with this old guy, and we're in this hatchback driving through Kyrgyzstan. He's like, Kyrgyz? And I was like, no. I was like, English? And he's like, no. And what else did he know? Oh, Russian? I was like, no. I know some Spanish. I was like, do you know Spanish? And he's like, no. So 5 hours, no music, no nothing.
Oh, man.
We're just driving. And, like, he looks over at me about every 15 seconds and smiles and nods. And I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is. Nothing. I'm like, well, I'm too ugly to be sex trafficked. So, like, I got that going for me. But, like, just complete trust. Like,
Yeah.
So we drive 5 hours, and we get to this town called Karakul. And I eat dinner, and I met up with the outfitter. It's actually a woman named Natalia. And I ate dinner with her. And then...
She speaks English?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then this Russian guy named Vlad picks me up in this lifted F-250. And at this point, I've been up for 2.5 days straight. And we go to the grocery store. We buy 4 Red Bulls. Well, he buys 4 Red Bulls. He gives me 2. He takes 2. And he starts just cranking this Russian techno music. And it takes off. And we're going 70 miles an hour on some of these roads. And we're going up through mountain passes. Like the highest pass we went over was like 16,000 feet.
You drove over 16,000 foot?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Just flying up these roads. And it's all snowy. And he runs off the road and get back on. And at like 1 a.m, we get to this military checkpoint in the middle of nowhere. And it's just this one like little bar across the road. And these two Kyrgyz guys comes out, and they look like they're teenagers.
Got AKs strapped to their chest.
Yeah, and they're like, they wanted to see my rifle and my gun permit, which, yeah, whatever. And then they want to start taking knives and this and that. And I'm tired and over at this point. I'm like, nope. Slam my case shut, throw it in the truck, get in the truck, and I just sit in the passenger seat. And he's like, Vlad comes in, he's like, well, they want some money. And I was like, nope, get in, we're going. He's like, well, we can't. I was like, get in, we're going. So he hops in, we go.
No shit.
Yeah, we just take off.
Like, imagine that, because he's like, he gets a kickback on all that, too.
Yeah. And then make it to camp. And I know, like, we're in these crazy mountains, but I can't see any of it. And get to base camp and fall asleep and wake up the next morning. It's just this giant valley. Just
Really?
like, I can't even describe the terrain. It's like nothing you've ever seen. Just giant mountains,
Really?
snow-capped mountains, giant
And you're
valleys.
in the base of all of this?
Yeah, like we're up in the mountain range, but there's still mountains just towering above.
Yeah.
And like these rivers are just like ice blue. Like there's ice floating through them. And it's one of those times I took a step back and I'm like, this is special.
Yeah.
And after that, we had that morning, we had a 2.5, 3 hour drive over to this. It was an old Soviet mining town that had been abandoned. Yeah. And at one point there's like 20,000 people living there. And there's apartment complexes and schools and everything, but it's all just run down. And like now there's maybe 10 people that live there.
No shit.
Yeah.
That's eerie.
It was. It really was.
Yeah. Like a Chernobyl set,
Yes, very much so. And
like, what are 10 people doing in this? Like, how do they even survive that?
they had yaks and
Really?
And they're raising yaks, horses, and sheep.
Huh.
And they, all for food.
Yep.
Some of the horses you ride, some of them you eat.
Yep.
I didn't know how you differentiate between the ones you eat and the ones you ride.
They all look the same?
Yeah. So, once we get there, they're making a plan for the next morning, and they don't speak hardly any English. I don't speak Kyrgyz. So, but I get the gist that they want to go pack into the mountains and stay in a tent. So I'm like, okay. And it's November 10th, and it's, -10, -15 during the days. And I pull out my spotter and start looking at the mountains above, and I'm start finding ibex.
Instantly?
Yeah, pretty
Really?
quick. And I start showing them, and they're like, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "Why don't we stay in town?" Because it was late enough in the year that it started to work down.
Yep.
And they didn't want to at first, but eventually, like, we had seen like 20 billies within, a half hour of glassing. So they're like, "Yeah, let's stay in town." So we, for some reason, they didn't want to hunt that day. I found a good billy, but he's like, it would have been like a 4,000 foot climb up to him.
Oh, that's rough.
But there was enough time. I knew I could have got to him, but they're like, "No, let's just wait till tomorrow." And so we just drove around, and then there's this hot springs next to this big river that run through the valley.
Yeah.
So we went and sat in the hot springs, and like just the whole experience, like where I was at, like it's hard to really put into words, but I think that was like my first big international hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I was maybe 22, 23 at the time, and just it felt surreal to be there.
Yeah.
And the next morning, we get up and found the billy again. We had like a 4,000 foot climb to get
How
up
long
to
does
him.
that take?
It took 5 hours maybe, because it's icy, and like the guys I was with, they wore rubber boots and like foot wraps, no socks, just rubber
I've
boots.
seen this before. Guys packing like ibex and tur off of mountains and literally like rubber boots.
Yeah, those guys were like animals. They were insane. And I had just come off like a 3-month guiding season where I'd been guiding elk and I'd been hiking a lot.
So you're
so
prime.
like, yeah, like I was in pretty good shape, and they made me look like a little bitch.
No shit.
Oh yeah, like they were insane.
So you ended up getting on this, or?
Yeah. So got up there, got on the ibex, and got him killed. He rolled like 700 yards, and we're getting down to it, and I wanted to take pictures up on this like plateau because you could see the whole valley that the ibex was sitting on, and the guide makes it there like 3 steps before I do, and grabs it by the tail and just flips it. The thing goes like another 700 yards,
No.
just endos, and
That doesn't tear it up?
no, surprisingly not. I was pissed because the whole time I'm like, it's gonna be ruined, because it was going down a rock a rock slide.
Yeah.
And get down to it, and like pictures are still cool, but like really if we would have taken pictures where it ended up,
Yeah.
they would have been way better. But
Okay.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then they're like, the guides didn't have binos, no nothing, and he's like, "Do you have a knife?" I was like, "Yeah," which most of the time, even if I go on a guided hunt, I have to take care of my own animal.
Oh, 100%.
I don't. It's just one of my things. I don't feel
It's
comfortable
weird.
letting a guide skin an. Like, they can help me if they want,
For sure.
but I'm not gonna sit there. And I have the funny thing is with clients though.
I don't want a client.
When a
touching
client wants to help me, I'm like, "No, just sit down."
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the biggest hypocrite when it comes to that.
I'm with you though. I'm with you. I feel, and I don't know how to explain it without sounding like an asshole, but like I just don't want to feel and look like one of those people.
Yep.
Personally.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds bad, but like as a guide, that's what you're paying us for our services,
Yep.
right? Like, go sit in the truck, go get warmed up, start heading back. I got
But
it.
I don't want to look like your typical client. You know what I mean?
100%. And I've had my daughter. She was fortunate enough to come on. She drew an antelope muzzleloader tag. She ends up taking out. She's like, "Dad, it was October 1st, so the elk are still screaming where we were at in my
Yeah.
buddy's ranch." And so I call him like, "Hey, the bull's bugling." He's like, "Dude, I got a client in town. Like, come help me with this. You can help me get him on this. We can get him in and out of here." So I talked to her. I'm like, "Hey, let's go. You could watch Dad work and then hear a bunch of bulls bugling." Anyways, absolute shit show. He ends up shooting this elk like 15 times, and like it was his first elk. He's like laughing about it. So my daughter got to see like the non-respect side of things. Like, she's like, "Dad, why does this guy think it's funny?" And I had to explain it to her. I'm like, guys like this, like they've never worked for an animal. They don't respect these animals. They don't know how they live. They're not out here all season watching, studying, learning everything, every footstep that these things make, every play that this animal's making. We have to have a counter for it. So there's like, that's where I feel a lot of that respect comes from as a true hunter, right?
Yeah.
And so she got to see, because they work their asses off. I've taken them on death marches where I'm like, oh, they're done with this, you
Yeah.
know. And then you're either, I've taken them on those paths where
It's going one way or another.
you're either giving up on it or you're a hunter for life,
Yep.
you know. And especially my oldest, she's been on several of those with me, and so, but at the same, getting back to that was, hey, cool, like now work begins, and here's my little teenage daughter, hanging, holding this bull leg, till I can get in, and here this client is just sitting there, taking pictures and selfies and calling all his buddies. And granted, that's what we're there for.
Yeah.
And then it came to it right as we go to get the elk out of there. She's actually like she's got like back straps on her camera gear. We just loaded everything on her as much as she could carry so we can make as least amount of trips as possible. But as soon as we get near the truck, he's just like, oh, hold on, I got it. And like puts the pack on with the head. And he like literally.
You had to get a picture. I guarantee
He throws his giant ass camera to my daughter. He's like, could you get some shots? And she's like looking at me and I'm dying laughing. I'm like, welcome to my world, kid. And he's like doing the whole, and she's clicking all these photos for him and, making it look like he packed this bull out, and it was hilarious. But, like the same time, like he just didn't even offer, sitting there asking how long we're going to be. And it's like, you can help, but at the same time, it's what we're there for. But like, I never want to look like that guy.
Yeah.
That's what and especially like having a following and people know that you're like, oh, that dude just, because I've done it. We're like, oh, you guys got to hunt with so-and-so. Like, dude, that dude was the biggest piece of shit. Didn't even offer, didn't do this, didn't tip. And you're like, oh, man, like, I never want to be that dude. So, that's I think that's for me personally. Like, I don't want to look like that client that just doesn't even offer. And
I want to be the client that they want to hunt with again.
And they invite you back. That's opened up so many. I've gotten in, worked, and been able to hunt. Not free, but like get in, like dude, come back anytime, like because it's like no, like I got it, like let me. And then you're building that friendship, and it's not just like a client guide relationship. Now it's like, oh cool, dude, like we sat here and you talk with your clients, you get to know them on a very personal level, which you already probably do sitting in a truck or a blind with these guys for a week straight. But it's just a more personal, intimate time when you get to share processing an animal with somebody, versus like, all right, cool. But at the same time, I like when they fuck right off.
Oh yeah, if I see a hunter pull out a knife, especially on a sheep, I'm like, nope.
Got it.
There's only been one guy I've let touch his own sheep.
Really?
And it was Jarrett Dueling. He's from British Columbia, and he's a stone sheep outfitter he's guided like 150 sheep. And I was like,
you really
you're good.
Can't tell him no. You're
No,
like, I'll watch
he was
you.
teaching me some things.
Yeah, I had one client that was a world-renowned taxidermist. I mean, this guy's he's a Canadian, great guy. He's the only person. And I was like, show me, like, even though I know what I'm doing, like to have somebody of that skill with a knife. And I mean, he was like a surgeon. And I had actually an actual surgeon. That guy was scary, where he would just like grab the joint, just like one swoop, and he would just taking things off. And I'm like, God, like I feel I'm pretty quick with, taking joints, popping joints up. It was just one little twist of the wrist. I mean, he was just removing everything. So there's been a couple times where I was cool sitting back and like, all right, show me.
Yeah.
If I was a client bringing you a world trophy animal, how do you want it as a taxidermist?
Yeah.
So it's cool to be able to have those experiences, and that's where I'm just shutting up and just watching. Like,
yeah, and I think that's an important part as a guide and just a hunter in general. Being like, there's a lot of ego with hunters.
Big time.
And guys will deny it. Everybody has an ego.
Mm-hmm.
Every hunter has some sort of an ego. There's pride in being, killing a big animal or whatever. But I think it's important as guides and hunters to be able to learn, be able to shut up and learn.
Yep.
And as a guide, I think I get some shit from guys for going on guided hunts, because like a lot of guys are DIY or nothing. But I feel like as a guide, you become a better guide when you are on the other side of the equation.
For sure.
Because, as a guide, like I might be 90 days deep into a Mexico season, running on 10 hours of sleep in the last week. This guy comes in and it's his first day, and I'm beat, but he deserves
the same as
the same as the first guy. Yeah. And you need to remind yourself of that. And I think being on the other side of the equation where you are the one that put the money up and you can see how the guide interacts with you, I think it makes you a better guide.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you more aware of the situation.
Well, then it lets you know, like, the little things, like,
Yes.
oh, why, like, why's he got an attitude? Why is he not happy with me? But it comes down to not guiding the guide, which is a huge thing with clients
Yep.
when they're trying to control everything. But, learning, like, okay, like, if it's something that I'm not liking this guide doing, like, I got to make sure I'm not doing it. And at the same time, this whole DIY public land versus guided shit.
90% of them aren't DIY. Somebody's
such
giving them info.
Yeah,
like,
it's such bullshit anyways, and now there's like this pride and then like this division in the hunting world. Like it's got to be public land and DIY, and it's like cool, go do it. But at the same time, I don't have a full season sometimes to take off and go chase bulls
Yeah.
for a month. I have a week, or there's clients that literally that's all they can earn in a season or a year is to take that 1 week off, and it's like why would I want to go waste my time figuring it out? I haven't had time to scout the area. Not everybody has those opportunities, and I feel like in the hunting world, it's gotten so with all like the BH guys and public land this, and now it's like,
all
oh,
these
you're guided.
buzzwords,
Yeah.
like-
Now, it must. Yeah, well, you got it guided. And then a lot of people think if you're hunting private, it's a gimme.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, man, I have to hunt this ranch that's surrounded by other ranches that are full of alfalfa fields, and you're sitting there just watching everything off of you, hoping something's going to roll through. Then you got to make everything happen, or the pressure's so much higher on these ranches, it's a nightmare trying to get in on these animals. They're
Yeah.
skittish. I mean, so when you break it down, I mean, dude, at the end of the day, it's like just go hunt something that you enjoy
Yeah.
and just have fun with it. It doesn't matter what now if you're hunting a high fence. I don't even care if people hunt high
I don't
fences.
either. I don't
It's
care
when
at all.
they act like it's some public land DIY thing. That's when I'm like, dude, just own it. Like it's cool. Like if somebody invited me to come hunt a high fence, I'm not saying no.
I don't have anything against it as long as you're honest about it.
That's it.
I really, when it comes to hunting, as long as you're legal,
Yep.
I don't give a shit what you do.
If you enjoy it, who cares?
Yeah, just be honest about it.
Yeah.
Be legal. I don't care.
Yep.
If you want to go shoot pigs out of a chopper or thermal or whatever, I don't give a shit. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Just be honest about what you're doing.
Yep.
It's like, no, I won't even get into
What?
that. What was his Instagram? That Heaven at
10K. He's around again. I think people have forgot he blocked me on everything.
He blocked me.
I'm blocked on everything too because I left like a train emoji.
I said choo choo and he blocked me.
But that's the thing. Like you're gonna go in and kill a giant bull and then build this whole entire image, and it's all for likes, man. It all comes back down to if we remove social media from the hunting world, half the people wouldn't be doing it.
That's my number one thing I say. Obviously, the influencer thing is what it is.
Yep.
Some of them you can tell are truly passionate about hunting.
Yep.
I hate giving shout outs, but there's this young kid I follow that grew up in the town that I did. Big Time Crit.
Okay.
That kid is always like every day. He works a normal job, but every day he's out there hunting, shed hunting, scouting.
Yep.
Busting his ass, and he makes videos. And he's like the one influencer type that I actually follow and enjoy following because he puts in the work. But my number one thing with the influencers is if you took away social media tomorrow, would they still hunt?
No.
And that's what I struggle with.
100%. Or it's, hey, show me pictures when you were a kid. Like you talk about this being in your blood and it's who you are. Like, really, because you just failed at your last demographic or your last genre of social media, and now you transition because now you're dating some dude or dating a guide or somebody's getting into it, and now they're like these experts, and it's like they portray themselves as like some lifelong, which if you're not, it's okay. Like when I came out here and started hunting, I'm from upstate New York. I never hunted elk in muleys, and my first 2 seasons, I spent almost the whole season just failing and learning. I got mentored by some really incredible guys that are just absolute killers. But I never was out here like, oh, this is what I'm doing. These are my tips. I was like, wow, I screwed up. I have no idea. I just ruined this stock.
Yeah.
Learned, I walked up on a bull thinking it was another hunter. My first few years of doing it, I thought it was some asshole. It was the most fluty, weirdest sounding, and I'm like, God, this guy is miserable. And it was just over and over and over. I'm like, this dude's gonna burn his lungs out. And I come turn this corner as a bull in a freaking wallow, and I'm like, it's like staring, and I'm like, learning that type of stuff, but able to put it out there. And I feel like that's where I've captured a lot of people is because I put a lot of my fails out there, especially in the hunting side of things. Like, oh, screwed this up. Like, forgot my boots. I'm hunting in Crocs all week. You know, and instead of like trying to act like these hardcore Billy badasses that are just stacking all this stuff. And but yeah, I'm with you. It's like, I think it's the cool fad thing to do. And it gets you some followers and likes to be able to work with some companies because you have to put on this fake image for people that never even give a shit. And I tell it all people all the time, like, dude, if you deleted your Instagram, nobody's going to give a fuck about you in a couple of months anyways.
Yeah. Like, as long as you're real, I respect you. Yeah. I don't care if you kill stuff or not.
Yeah.
As long as you're real, I'll respect you. On the other hand, if you're giving advice and you're doing instructional videos and stuff like that, you better be stacking bodies.
For sure.
Like, if you're, telling people how to hunt, you better be killing animals.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have no business doing that.
See, and I never consider, even with guiding and everything, I hate even people like, oh, dude, you're a pro and you're an I'm like, fuck,
hate that.
Absolute, dude. I'm like, there's times I'll show up with, I'll get hit up and come help. Like, I'll take blacktail. I hunt with my buddy. He does blacktails in Oregon. Dude would go over there, and he's like this. He's just mastered it, and he crushes giant black. I've never hunted blacktail in my life, but I'm out there guiding it, and people are like, damn, dude, you had a great. I'm like, fuck, dude, pure luck. Sitting, burning glass, staring at a cut for hours and hours and hours, and just honestly, it's just luck, a lot of luck. But the people are like, dude, what do you think of this? What's your advice? And I'm like, I have no idea. And I'm the first to tell people, like, bro, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, and I think with me, a lot of people are able to relate to that because even though I have the numbers on social, I'll be the first to be like, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. I tell people, point me in a direction, give me my boundaries, and I'll turn something up. But it's just by putting on miles or hours behind glass, but it's just literally, I'm like, what's your advice on this? I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, and like bears, I can give advice. I feel like over the last decade, like figuring, especially when baiting and learning habits, where they live, what the big boars are doing, not, like that type of stuff. I feel like I'm confident enough to be able to help somebody get on or point you in a direction of drainages. I would be looking at these sides, whatever, right? This time of the year, they're feeding on this. But like elk, I'm like, dude, I hate elk. I hate elk, but it has that weird draw that you have to come back to it.
I would take mule deer over elk any day of the week, but elk, there's something about them.
There's something that just, when then one steps out, and you're like, God damn, like, okay, this is why I'm here. Yeah. But people, during this time of year, I'm like, I have no idea. Dude, I suck, especially archery. I'm like, don't ask me any advice on archery elk hunting.
Yeah.
What do calls you like? I'm like, I don't even call. I'll cow call. I'm one of those. Like, I just never got in the calling, but I'd rather get in. I'll locate them, slip in, try to do my best. That's just my style, and I fail a lot. It's just, I might go a few seasons without killing something, but you might show up and fuck happens the first 15 minutes. Like I did that with one of my buddies. We pull up. There's one bedded. I crawled for an hour and a half on my face. Crawled for 400 yards through all this bullshit. Got the 50 yards, stood up, zipped one through it. I was like. Look back at him. He's like, holy shit. I'm like, that'll never happen. It was a great bull. I'm like, but it was just pure luck, And so, but like, yeah, it's the image and these people trying to make it look like they have a couple good seasons and now they're pros at it. Yeah. Like that's what really bugs me about certain things.
Like I said, I really consider myself a fairly average hunter.
Yeah.
That's just really good at finding opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah, I get quite a few questions. That, not like, I'm not one of those people, well, everybody's been asking me,
Yeah.
But no, I look at a handful of guys that ask me, tips and tricks and whatever. And, some of it I can give them, my best answer, but a lot of it, like, it's just stuff that I don't know and I don't feel comfortable giving advice on.
Yep.
But being able to be humble enough to be like, hey, I don't know. Like, I'm not the guy to ask for that. I think is crucial because everybody else gets a question and makes a video on it and like they're an expert. They do a Google search and look up what everybody else is saying on the internet and then they make a video like it's their info.
Yep.
It's
unfortunate, but you know what? It's part of everything, and I feel like everybody every demographic or industry kind of has their same shit.
Yeah, I used to let it bother me a lot more than I do now.
Yeah.
Now, like, yeah, I see it all, and, like, I'm like, oh, fuck that guy. But then, like, I'll just move on, and, like, a few minutes later, I forget about it.
Yep.
I used to, like, when I was younger, I was toxic. I'd be the guy that comment on everything, like, talking shit.
We all go through that phase. I feel like that is a phase that everybody has to go through, just, like, and then you hear the people like, oh, only miserable people talk shit online. I'm like, I'm not miserable, but I have no problem talking shit
Yeah.
either, you know? So
I had to delete my Facebook because I was just a troll. I was like, I just get on here and I get pissed. What am I
Yep.
doing? So I finally deleted it. And like, for the most part now, like, I'm able to just move past it. Like, it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yep.
But everybody's an expert these days.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a disservice to people that are actually like looking for good, real information.
Yep.
Because everybody's putting out their ideas, and a lot of these newer hunters, they don't have the knowledge to be able to sift through the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So they see, an influencer post something, and they're going to take it as gospel.
Yeah.
So it just is what it is. Just you have to be able to, decide, try to figure out what's real, what's not.
That's the biggest part, and I feel like I get a lot of questions. That's why I like to, I did it for years. I'd put out like, hey, if you guys coming up to the season, if you have questions, these were the people, because these would be the people to ask.
Yeah.
And I'd like to put that always out there, because you see these guys with big numbers, and you spend time with them. You're like, I've taken guys out that are hunting celebrities, and it comes time to clean an animal, and they have no idea where to even start on it. And like I'm looking at this guy like, I took a couple guys out a few years ago on an antelope hunt. They work with some big name companies. They got TV shows. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And they're supposed to be doing everything. And I'm like, all right, guys, like I'm gonna go get the truck. If you guys want to get it zipped open, while I bring all the gear around. Here, like I had one knife, and there's 4 of us standing there. So I was like, why don't you get started? I'm gonna go get all our gear, bring everything back. I come back, and they're still standing. I'm like, what are we doing? And I'm like, we got the photos. Like, what happened? What's wrong? And they're like, we want to watch how you do it. And then as soon as I said, okay,
Yeah.
you could, it's just, all I asked you to do was gut this animal, just zip it open, get everything out of it, start cooling it down. It's 100 degrees out here right now. And so and they sat there and watched it, and I'll never, I would prefer them just be like, hey man, like, we don't know. Can you just, and I sat there and I walked them through everything. Cause I love helping. One of my big passions lately has been helping father-sons, father-daughters connect. And like, not to be an expert, but like, I know the basics of, hey, this is how you can go out, especially us working with a lot of veterans. They're intimidated to just go out into the mountains and kill something. Cause I've run into people, I ran these 2 elk hunters that had like ginseng backpacks on. They were big boys, and we were way back. And I'm like, I straight up asked them, like, what are you gonna do when you kill an elk? They're like, well, we're gonna pack it out. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
Like literally, like high school backpacks on these guys. And I'm like, and had to walk them through. I had an extra pack. I told them their camp. I ended up packing out. They were staying. I ended up coming back and bringing them a pack. And I was like, just drop it out my truck, which they did, which was cool. It was an old shitty pack anyways, but they never ended up killing anything. But like, I love helping, but like not the tips and tactics, but like this is how, right? Like the how-tos, the 101s.
Yeah.
And that's where I've really showed. So I took the time and shared with these guys, like, okay, like this is where I start, and a million ways to skin a cat type of deal.
Yep.
But I'm like, this is what I have found works for me, especially in quick situations, like gutless method versus gut. There's a million different things, right? So when I sat there and showed these celebrity hunters how to gut and skin, and like, okay, if I was going to do a pedestal mount on the floor, I don't want the whole stitch down the back, so I'm going to tube everything out for you and walk them through. And they're like, dude, nobody's ever taken the time to show us.
Really?
And I was like, and they're like, yeah, since we're on this celebrity status, like they either think that we do it or we don't want to have anything to do with it, and they just take care of everything for us. And I was like, not how I work. Here's a knife.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing it, you're doing it. Like let's learn together. And it was one of the great. It turned into an incredible. I mean, the whole trip was a lot of fun, but no one's ever just taken the time to show them, and they've never taken the time to just ask. And that's all it takes. Like, if you're with a client and you want to help, and if a client ever asks, like, hey, can I help? And it's let's say we're doing a shoulder mount, okay, here, make your first cuts up the hind legs. Just start working it like you would do with a kid. I give my daughter a knife. I'm like, just start working here, and I'll do face and get everything rolled out. And she's sitting there just picking away. I'll do it with a client. Like, you can't fuck up the back. Yeah. Oh, I cut a hole in the hide. Like, that's why I gave you the hind legs.
Yeah.
We're not full body in this thing. So it's crazy to me though that so many people will listen to advice and tips from people that just they have no idea. And I've worked with them, and I'm like, man, these motherfuckers put all these how-to videos out here, and he didn't even know how to debone the hind quarters off this thing.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot. And so that's why I always tell people, like, find the true, real dudes, and most of them aren't on social media, or most of them don't have big followings, are the guys that are out in the field every day, figuring it out. They're shed hunting. They're following these animals. They know the the habitats, the rituals, what these things are doing, where they're wintering, where they're summering. Those are the guys that reach out and talk. I feel like you're one of them. I would have put you on that list.
I don't consider like.
I mean, I know you're a humble dude, but as a guide, like in doing it, like it's just one of those things that you just naturally pick up. Because I mean, look at how many animals we're putting our hands on in a season,
Yeah.
especially if you're going like deer to elk to Mexico,
Yep.
back to here, all that. I mean, and if you're living that guide life where you're August to January or more February, in some seasons even longer, like
Yeah.
I mean, dude, there's months where we're gone and we're in the field, and so you get so much experience with it. So it's nice to be able to put some tips out there, but at the same time, there's a lot of guides I've worked with that are like, holy fuck, like you call it great elk, but that's pretty much what
Yeah.
I'll let you call. But grip and rip, and you're like, fuck me, man. Like,
Yeah.
let's slow down a little bit. So
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I would like to try to help people get into hunting more. Like you said, more than one-on-one. I'm not the type of guy that's going to make videos.
yep,
Didn't do that. Like, I feel ridiculous doing
Yeah.
that. But I feel like I've been really fortunate to have been able to do what I have.
yeah,
And I kind of want to give back in a sense. Like,
Yeah.
Whether that be a kid that doesn't have an opportunity to hunt but is interested, or, even an adult that is interested. Hunting has a very tough barrier of entry.
mm-hmm.
Just learning
alone.
the laws and draws and all of that.
That's a
And
nightmare in itself.
to me, I like I said, I'll research stuff to
Yep.
death. So like to me, it all kind of started coming naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So I like from when I was a kid, I just learned. I'd sit there and read the proclamation over and over again. I'd get online and research everything. And growing up, I was like, it's all pretty straightforward. But then once I made myself take a step back and like look at it as somebody that's never been involved,
Mm-hmm.
that has interest, it'd be daunting. Like,
Well, every state has different regulations. Every state has different hunting regulations and rules and tags and draws and I mean, it's wild. And this state has orange, this one doesn't. You can
Yep.
do this during this season. And I mean, even as a guide, I went out one time to Montana and I was in a completely different unit because the antelope units weren't the same as like considered like on the big game. So when you were just looking at the hunt units, I just pulled up and like, oh, I'm in 108 or whatever it was, and I just get right on Onyx, and I didn't switch over to like the antelope. And I was like 300 miles off, and I'm rolling around just all day, just shooting the shit like with my buddy. And we end up running this game warden, and he's like, "You want to tag?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, no problem. Like finally legal. You got nothing,
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're 300 miles from your unit," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. Like this is unit one, whatever unit I was in." I pull it up, and he's like, "Yeah, no, that's like the big game map versus the antelope." And I was like, there's two different, so yeah, felt like an absolute idiot. Thank God I didn't shoot an antelope. We ended up packing up camp, driving to the unit, shot an antelope. And I was like, God, and then my buddy, this was years ago, and he still gives me shit to this day.
Well, even last year, I was hunting Audette or Barbary in New Mexico on an over-the-counter tag. And I had my tag, my license, and I forgot a conservation stamp, which I was hunting BLM in New Mexico. I believe it's BLM. You're required to have it, or National Forest, one or the other. You're required to have it. I got stopped, got a $50 ticket. It's my only wildlife violation, like anything like that ever.
Oh,
But it was a $12 stamp I missed out on. Just I didn't know.
yeah.
Because like when I buy stuff in Montana or Wyoming, it like automatically
it.
mandates you. Like if it is something you need, it forces you to buy it. So I bought it online in New Mexico and it didn't. And yeah, I got a ticket for it.
Yep.
So like even as much as I've done it, like
It's
there's still stuff. Yeah. So I get it when guys are trying to learn the laws and stuff, and it's daunting. It really is.
And it's very intimidating. I mean, even just putting it for draws, like when and where and draw results and what states are going to take this now versus it's a lot, but it's cool to be able to help where you can.
Yeah.
And and that's where I feel like lately I have this huge urge to just because we take the veteran side of things, we help these guys, we chase inches for years, and that was what's saving veterans' lives was this giant grip and grin with a great deer, great bull, whatever. And then we really started listening to these guys, and we're like, dude, what do you, instead of us going and doing this hunt, it's all this pressure, we're trying to produce, we're chasing it, it's not fun. You know how it is when you got some, and then we're filming for a show or whatever, and you got to have the content. So we really started listening to the community and like, hey, what do you guys want? And it came back, the majority of them were, they're like, man, I just want to learn. Nobody's ever taught us. We just go on these hunts, pretty much a guided hunt when we're taking these veterans out on these hunts. There it is. They shoot it. Cool. We get a picture with it. We swoop it up. Goes to the processor. They ship them to me. A year later, you get your mount. Thanks for your service, right? But these guys were like, we're not learning anything. And then that's when I really took things back. Like, man, like, not calling out in charities of being like enablers, but in the same way, like, if this veteran has come on all these hunts with you and he still doesn't know how to gut a deer or process this, like, what are you doing for the guy? Granted, the trip's a great time, the camaraderie on the trip, but like, let's start teaching them. And that's like where
teach a man to fish versus give a man a fish.
That's all what it comes down to. Yeah. And then we started doing these polls, and they're like, I would love to learn to do this with my son so we could go do it on our own, but like, we don't even know where to start. And so that's where I have some good buddies that have some ranches, and we'll just doe hunts.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. Yeah.
Just a doe hunt. And there's no pressure. There it is, standing in an alfalfa field. And technically, it's not even to us, we consider hunting. It's just killing. It's just there. But it's not about grinding out 10 mountain miles and sipping water out of springs and all that shit. Work to that. But for the start, like, stop chasing these Instagram posts and shot. I mean, you run into these guys, and they're just like, oh, I passed on 6 deer. And they're showing you, like, dude, why wouldn't you shoot that? Oh, I got to have a giant. It's like, and then they ended up killing nothing. They have no fun. Versus I could take to father, son. They both get to shoot a couple deer each. And then they're learning together on each animal. So by the time they leave, they learned. I mean, you'd be surprised how many guys don't even know how to hold a knife properly when they're just skinning something. So it's like, okay, cool. Break it down to the basics. I cut this way so you're not cutting through the hair. You're not dulling your knife. You don't have hair all over the meat.
Yep.
Hold it this way, bend it this way. Just those little things that you and I can do in the dark. It's just kill enough bears. Where to cut the wrist, how to pop the pad off, all that good stuff. So and so if I could share a little bit of that knowledge with them, but at the basic level, not these tactics and all this crazy stuff. But like, hey, if you cut this and stick the leg through, it's a handle, and you can drag this fucker the 100 yards to the truck instead of it makes it a little bit easier. That kind of stuff I really enjoy showing them. And then the next season, you see this father-son tagging you in a picture, and they're out doing it on their own, sitting in a tree stand, and the son shoots a doe, and then they get to do it to themselves. But like that doe that these influencers, these big name hunters wouldn't even bat an eye at, and like, oh, I would never. That's the trophy for that season for this father and son, because they're learning. And then the next year he shoots a spike or whatever. And that's another thing that I got caught up into for a while. I hate when people are killing things just for social media. That's a huge like irk of mine. And then just to post it for content. And it's like, and then they're like, oh, well, how'd the feel the freezer? Like, if you're just doing this for content, like that's where it drives me nuts. But then you see some kid that shoots a little spike or a little rag bull and then gets crucified on social. It's like, guys, like, that's that kid's first bull, or he went out and that's his first solo hunt and he made it happen. Like, who gives a shit? Like, let that, even if it's a grown ass man, like now there's this image, like if you're not killing a giant, you shouldn't be killing it at all. It's like, man, if that thing brings you joy and you got a rush from it and you're about to provide for your family and you're proud of that animal, who gives a shit? How big, how old, go have fun. And that's what I tell everybody that gets into it. Stop. Just go have fun. If you're going to get a rush sitting this doe walking down the trail, and you've been sitting in this tree stand in Alabama sweating your ass off all season, and you finally get this opportunity and that made you happy, to pull the trigger on it. Like,
I used to get too wrapped up into the, trophy animals.
Yep.
Like, not necessarily, I don't know, trophy, but like, just guys killing 2 points and stuff like that. I was like, why are you doing that? But I'd get so worked up about it, and it's not going to change anything.
Nope.
It's their tag.
Yep.
I was doing it when I was a kid. That's how I shot a couple 2 points when I was younger. And yes, I like big old deer as much as the next guy, but on a general season hunt, they are not managed for old trophy animals.
Yeah.
Yes, there are really good animals on general season units, but they're managed for opportunity.
Yep.
And I think that's what people need to remember. And at the end of the day, it's their tag. And if that's what gets them excited and that makes them happy, then it's their call.
Yep.
And yeah, I just, it's not worth getting worked up over. If they're happy, let them be happy.
Yeah, and it's the same thing, but at the same time, it's like you can't be the guy that sits there and bitch about there not being any big deer if you're shooting.
It's a double-edged sword.
If you're shooting these ones. But if you're a new hunter and you're getting into it, forget inches.
Yeah.
Don't chase inches. Chase memories, chase experiences, and learning. Like, that's what I tell everybody. Like, don't worry. Is that big enough? I hate that when you take a new guy. Is that big enough?
When it's a new hunter,
like, dude.
It's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
My oldest daughter pulled that once, but at the same time, she's killed a lot of bears, and, she's like, I don't know if it's big enough. What do you think? And I'm like, and this is where as a dad, I was like, listen, if you think that bear is going to make you happy, shoot it. Like, and, because she hears me, she hears my buddies. I'm at the point, like.
Is he 6 foot? Is he?
And that comes with the evolution of hunting, where, like, as a family, we always try to shoot equal or bigger every year, right? Because especially with bears, I don't need to go kill a 4-foot bear. Like, that's not going to bring me. I would rather watch it, mess with it, throw a rock, have fun filming it. Like, that brings me more joy than just shooting the bear.
Yep.
So, but my kids have seen that as well, and so they've evolved with me without having the number. So it's kind of, that was that double-edged sword. So, like, my daughter's last bear, she ended up passing like 19 bears not last year, but the year prior before, and she's like, how do you know, Dad? Like, I always hear you talking. I'm like, you just know if the animal makes you happy and it steps out and you do the, oh shit, like, don't question it. Like, if you had that initial, like, oh damn, and it got the pumps flowing, pull the trigger on it.
Yeah.
And so, and she passed, and there was some that I probably would have shot that she passed on.
Really?
That's part of learning, like trying to, especially on a bear, they're
Bears are tough.
so hard to ground score. And so I'd be like, kid, you're getting into the age, you got to start making that decision. I'm not always going to be here for you. And so that was one of those learning years. And then finally this bear stepped out and she did and like looked at me and I'm like, if you're giving me that look, shoot that son of a bitch. And man, she hammered it. I actually mouth called it in. It was just a boar that was cruising through.
Oh,
and
really?
I didn't have anything. I started squeaking, just screwed around like a freaking squirrel type. And it stopped, came right back. Didn't even hit our bait, nothing. It just came to check us out, turned and started leaving. And I was like, you better shoot it now. And she punched it. But, she knew, and we got up on it. It was an old bear. It wasn't her biggest bear, close to it, but it was a beautiful stud boar. I mean, very mature, big head on. I think it went like 17 3/4 skull. I mean,
Sweet.
Great bear. But she gave you that look, and she's like, now I get it. And I'm like, Chrissy, anything that gives you that feeling, like, it doesn't matter if it's a doe or a giant 200-inch deer. Like, if it's gonna bring you joy, have fun. And if it brings you joy just watching it, I'm cool with it too. Like, we don't have to just kill it because we're here. I mean, there's been so many times where we've had opportunity on thing, and I'm like, it's your call, kid. You want to do it? She's like, can we just watch him? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's where we lose track with the image and having to have that persona of being this hardcore killer and backcountry dudes, and then we really lose track of what's actually fun. And I lost track in it for a long time, chasing, helping these companies and wanting to be in with the crowd. And once I realized, like, it wasn't bringing me joy, it was the times that I was just bombing the Wyoming to go shoot doe antelope with my freaking 9-year-old, and we had the absolute time of our life, like, where we're the best bonding moments you can ever have. And I'm like, that was my aha moment. Like, I don't give a fuck about SIG. I don't care about these other like, they don't care about me.
Yeah.
But this is the little girl right here that sat there while I cleaned my truck and got everything organized and picked up all her sunflower seeds. And she sat there with her little knife and just skinned this thing out. And that brought her all the joy in the world. And I put my camera just to like watch, and I can go back and watch her do this.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, this is what it's about. Like, and and everybody goes through those phases. I feel as a hunter, like, got to be this guy, this big alpha dude, got to kill these giant animals. And then, you watch these guys, and as their kids get older or they start learning or educating people, you kind of shift into, like, let's just have fun. And that's where I'm at now, especially in the hunting world. Like, I just want to create memories with my kids. And I've had more fun, more joy, more memories out shooting prairie dogs while we're chasing antelope and not even caring. It's like, Dad, what is that prairie dog? Like, then we went from antelope hunting to now we're freaking 3 hours in shooting prairie dogs out there, and you're like, oh, who cares? It's like, well, we'll go find it. Let's just go over the next ridge and we'll find another herd, and if not, we got more days in the season. And so that's where I'm at with it now as far as my chapter of hunting. It's like I have just as much fun shooting a cow elk versus obviously, I mean, I don't get the rush that you would with a bull screaming in your face, but like if my kids are there and I get to share that experience and then we come home and we get to process that whole animal as a family, everybody's working on something, we're packaging, we're canning, processing, that to me, like that whole from field to technically plate, field to table, that's where I'm at. It's like, it's been so much fun to be able to experience and watch my little girls just like go out there and be able to do it, or send them over a knob and be like, hey, let me know what's over there. And, you know, you hear a shot go off and they come running back all excited. I'm like, damn, all right. Like,
Yeah.
you know, this to me is joy. And so, but you have to go through those phases of,
Yeah,
you know, like,
I think people are always evolving as hunters. You know, for me, it was when I was younger, just I wanted to kill anything,
Yep.
which I think as a new hunter, that's what you should be.
absolutely.
And then it turned into, you know, I want to kill bigger, more mature animals. And I'm still in that phase to a certain degree, but more so now, like, I want the adventure and I want the story.
Yep.
I like hunting internationally because obviously the hunt is a big part of it and getting the animal and all that. But I feel like I get to experience that country while avoiding the tourist traps and like
You get to see what that country truly has to offer,
Exactly.
because you're in villages, you're living in people's homes, or stopping in some old lady that, you know, the guide knows, and she has a hot meal for you as you're rolling through, and
Yeah.
it's the first time you've had a hot meal in days. I mean, that's what makes those trips. And like for me, I feel you on that, because like that's what I remember. You know,
Yeah.
like traveling to Africa and my buddy eating a hot pocket thing, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd eat it. You know, then he gets food poisoning because they had a riot and we didn't know that everything was shut down for like 4 days, and this liver onion hot pocket was sitting in a cooler at a gas station. He eats it, you know. But like those are the stories. Like, granted, we killed a ton of animals, but like that's when him and I get together. Like those are the stories that we talk about. Him almost dying in Africa, and you know, just the craziness and partying, and you know, all the adventures that come with it. Like that's when you get to that phase, you're like, oh man, like this is why I have no problem paying the money to go on these guided hunts, because like you're driving to Saskatchewan right now. Like I've done that drive, I want to say 3 or 4 times, and doing it with people it is so much fun, because the border could be a nightmare dealing with Canadians, and they're just as bad as going into Mexico sometimes, but it's great. And then you get to go up and you're experiencing the native culture in these areas. And if you don't have an attitude and you know how to talk to people, I mean, you get invited into so many families and rituals and cultures and the food. Like that's where I love.
there's, you know, obviously there's a lot of division in the media in the world and all that right now. But when you deal with people on a one-on-one basis,
Yep.
no matter where I've been in the world, I truly believe most people are good. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, obviously. But I feel like most people just want to live their life and be able to provide for their family.
Yep. And just be left alone.
And I enjoy going to these different countries and experiencing different cultures. And it sounds so cliche, but you realize people are not all that different.
Yep. At the end of the day, they want to love their family, they want to provide, and they just want to live a free, botherless life. And you know, that's pretty much what it comes down to. Is just they live in their little bubbles and they want to be left alone.
Yeah. And I've never been anywhere that I felt I wasn't really welcome. I mean, Russia, there's a
I
couple
can see
times.
the political environment there, but I mean, I have buddies that have hunted Russia before this whole Ukraine thing popped off, and they said it was the greatest time. I mean, they're over there in Moscow taking all the photos, walking around with all the amazing buildings, and all that stuff, and had no issue. So I can see, like, obviously with the propaganda and everything that's going on in the world, I can see where Russia's at right now.
It even, like, but it wasn't everybody. Like, some people were pretty warm,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it was pretty standoffish. But I think that's also just culturally kind of how they are.
Yep.
But even once you got them one-on-one, they're good people. Like, they're the same as anybody else.
For sure.
They want to live their life. They don't want to be fucked with, and they want to provide for their family.
You just show everybody with that mutual respect, and I feel like it opens up so many doors when you don't come in with a chip on your shoulder. You level yourself to where everybody is. It doesn't. I feel like that's something that I've definitely learned traveling, either through military or hunting all over the world, is when you put yourself on the same plane as everybody. Everyone's equal. Nobody's above anybody.
Yep.
And that'll open up so many more doors because you see some of these guys that come in because they have wealth or they've been very successful business-wise. They put themselves on a pedestal and then they treat people and they talk down to people. I mean, we've had it as guides. Like, you know, like, motherfucker, who are you talking to like this? You know, one of those, like, I want to, like, turn, like, you know, like, I get it, you know. But when you come in with an open mind, you're like, man, I want to be on this. I want to be able to connect with this village or the local elder here. I'm going to sit down and have chai tea with this guy, but I want to talk to him on the same plane. I mean, it opens up so many. I mean, then like, hey, we heard this, and you start getting information, and this guy talked to this guy, and since you were a cool guy, and hooked their kids up with some candy or some, you know, pens and pencils, and then now they're opening up ranches, or they have the little secret spots where they've been watching these rams in this area. You know, it just opens up so much stuff when you're able to connect with people.
Generally, in Mexico, being down there as much as I am, if the guys, like, I deal with the drivers and, like, a lot, and, like, generally if I'm getting an attitude from them, if I take a step back, it's because I'm being an asshole.
Okay.
Because, like, you get me 120 days down there a year, like, I can be an asshole. You get me running on 10 hours of sleep in a week.
Yep.
Like, generally, I feel like people get treated how they deserve.
For sure.
So if I'm getting negative back, it's when I have to take a step back and be like, hey, maybe it's on me.
And that's a cool part about traveling and going on different adventures, because it's getting out of your comfort zone, which makes you start thinking, like, why is this guy being such a prick to me? Granted, there's times where you go through checkpoints or
there's definitely some guys that are just pricks.
Oh, and that's where I don't have a filter with those. Like, if I try to match and I'm cool, got a smile on my face, and you're coming to me, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna match you real quick.
Yeah.
But you know, it humbles you a lot of times. You're like, okay, maybe it is me, or maybe they think this of me because I am an American, and so I need to find a way to let them know, like, I'm not above anybody because I'm in this country. Because I'm sure you've run into that too. I mean, just being an American alone, we're judged, we're looked at.
Everybody always has a preconceived notion on how you're going to be.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel we have to go above and beyond even more to make ourselves not the stereotypical American tourist.
For sure.
Because, like, you know, we're hunters and we already have this stigma against us, and we're American, which a lot of the world doesn't like.
You got a lot of strikes going against you hunting internationally as American.
We have a lot. And so, but as a young guy like you, you've learned how to mirror and match, and it's a skill that you pick up traveling the world because you have to. That's exactly it. We have strikes against us because we're Americans. We have the stereotype, just being an asshole, fast paced, like everyone has money and we're just these pricks.
Just ignorant. Like everybody thinks we're just ignorant.
Which we are as
a whole, we definitely are.
100%. And that's where traveling abroad, you come back and you hear what people are saying. You're like, it's not like that at all. You know, like, where'd you hear this? The news? Who told you this information? You know, and it sucks because we're over there trying to learn and make a good representation of being an American hunter, which we have everything against us, to leave a good impression, so that way we could come back and go back again. But then you come back and you hear your friends talking or somebody talking that you know, and you're like, I used to get it all the time from being in the Middle East. We're like, oh, these guys are a piece of shit. It's like, that's incredible. I met some of the nicest people that opened up their doors in the middle of a war zone and fed us, you know, and it's like, that guy didn't have to. Middle of the night, and he's got his wife cooking for us to feed us, like, because we're keeping it, like, I don't have anything negative to say about these people. There's bad in everybody.
Yeah.
You know, every culture has their good and bad. And it's like, that's what we're going to focus on. It's like, you know, that helped me a lot of, you know, not being that typical ignorant American, is being able to experience other cultures and be like, okay, they're the same as us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just have to be able to go into situations with an open mind and just experience it for what it is. Mm-hmm. Don't try to make it what you want it to be.
Nope.
You have to be able to go in and just experience it with an open mind, and, you know, exactly. Just flow with it.
You just have to. And you can't control half the shit over there. And that's where I think a lot of people we're impatient.
Yep.
Yeah, well, this is going to be 3 days to get here. You know, you don't just hop on a puddle jumper and you're in Salt Lake in an hour. Yeah. You know, it's like we got 3 days of dirt roads and cliffs and Death Valley.
Anybody that hunts internationally, frequently, everybody knows international hunts are an absolute shit show.
Yep.
There's Canada is not included. Mexico's not included, depending on the outfit you're going with. But you go overseas, it's a shit show without fail.
Even going to Argentina is
Argentina, it was an absolute shit show.
wild. Yes.
Absolute shit
Mine
show.
was a shit show. We got stuck in like Cordoba. I mean, it was the guy I brought with one of the guys we brought with us was in a wheelchair. He was wheelchair bound, and they ended up. I swear to this day, they kicked his wheelchair out of the back of the truck. A plane ran it over and drug it down the runway. No, I'm not even kidding.
Really?
It was this custom wheelchair that these Olympians get, and it's like all carbon fiber. It weighed like nothing. You can pick this thing up with like a pinky.
Yeah.
And it folded very flat. When we were leaving Argentina, they finally found his wheelchair. It was saran wrapped, and he's like, something doesn't look right. And I'm looking at this wheelchair, and I'm like, I agree. And we unwrapped this thing after they bring it out. It literally had been ground down, like put on its side and drug for a mile. Like the wheel was all the way almost completely gone, like ground off the carbon fiber handle, like the rest flat.
Really?
So like when I say like run down a runway, like drug down the runway under a plane, like that's what it looked like.
Holy
shit. It was
shit.
a nightmare, dude. We ended up finding this. That's where I was actually talking to Chris the other day. Was he helps an organization. What's the name of? Wheelchair Foundation. They give wheelchairs out from all over the world. I'm actually trying to find a picture to see because they ended up finding this lawn chair, like a white chair that you can kick the back legs out from other people and they fall over.
Yeah.
Bolted to a frame with tires on it to do this hunt. And I'm like pushing this guy around in the outback of freaking Argentina in this thing because his wheelchair ended up disappearing. But, being in that situation, we can't be these Americans like, this is a wheelchair and it's blah, blah, blah. Like, we just be like, okay, like, what's our solution?
Yeah.
Instead of becoming some asshole, it was like, okay, like, how do we fix this? And, they ended up coming up and finding this literally a lawn chair bolted to a frame with wheels on it, and we made it work. But Argentina was wild, absolutely wild.
Yeah, the Argentina, I would like to go back. I think.
Did you hunt stag there?
Yeah, stag and black buck.
Okay.
The outfit we went with was just a shit show. And then at the end, they wanted like $10,000 to ship our animals back a piece. And I tried to work with them, and like I wasn't extremely happy with the animals I killed anyways.
Yep.
I was like, fuck it, just keep them.
Yeah. That sucks.
Yeah, and it was a shit show.
Well, dude, I know you got a long drive ahead of you. You're headed north to Saskatchewan to do a bear hunt, so I won't keep much more of your time. You were just rolling through town. It was good to finally catch you and sit down and shoot the shit for a little bit. I appreciate you coming. So if there's anybody that is either getting into hunting or has any questions, do you want to put a social out there? If anybody wants to reach out, because, I mean, obviously, if they find you on Instagram, they're going to see that, I mean, you've done it all. We probably didn't even get into any of the guts of some of the crazy adventures that you've gone through over the years. So if there's anybody that wants to reach out and has any questions, I mean, is there a good way for them to contact you?
Yeah, you can, guys can hit me up on Instagram at Coleman Farrington. It's just my name. I'll be happy to answer any questions I can. And if it's something I can't answer, I'll be happy to refer them to whoever can.
And if anybody's looking to go to Mexico and stack some giant deer, how do they get a hold of you for that?
You can either hit up me or hit up the Old Mexico Hunting Company. Hit up the Instagram page.
Cool.
We don't post our deer. So
I've seen the pictures. I mean, it's pretty impressive what you guys are turning up down there.
Yeah. So our Instagram page is still active, but if you go on there, there's probably not much posted within the last year or two. We're definitely still running hunts. We're still killing a lot of deer. We just don't post a whole lot just because we don't really need to.
Good for you guys. I mean, that's the goal, right?
Yeah, we've learned long term, just if you don't need to let people, if you don't need to post it, keeping it quiet's easier. Yeah.
Any other outfits that you're connected to that if anybody's interested, bear, anything you would recommend, anybody? I'm sure you got a lot of outfits, but that's a loaded question.
Yeah. Bears, like, if you just want a bear, I'd recommend doing your research on places in Canada.
Yep.
That's your highest chance of success, which I'm thinking I'm going to put together a group or two for this next spring.
I actually want to talk to you after this. I got a couple that I want to put together. I have guys right now that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I definitely want to reach out.
Okay.
We could talk as soon as we get off the show here, but yeah, I'm in for that.
Because I love bear hunting. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy taking new people and it's just a fun, laid back hunt a lot of the time. This year was the first year in like 5 years I didn't kill a bear in Montana because I took my buddy Matt and he was able to get his first bear. I still hunt a lot for myself, but like I said, I feel like I'm kind of getting to the point where I want to transition more into, setting up opportunities for other people and helping other people. So,
keep an eye out for that for sure.
Yeah.
You looking at maybe starting your own consulting where people can reach out and you can put things together for them?
I'm thinking about that quite a bit.
Okay.
And, that I want to do that, but then also, I just want to help people that are interested in hunting get into hunting.
For sure.
Because for me, it's made such a huge impact on my life.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, for a non-hunter, I'm probably the least interesting person in the world because all I do is hunt.
Yep.
Like, I don't fish. I don't do anything besides hunt. And I just want to help people, get into it. Just because, like I said, the barrier of entry is huge. Trying to figure it out, and I want to help people learn, and I want
and save them money.
Yeah, I want to help people get to the point that they're confident enough to go do it on their own.
Yeah.
Even if they fail, just having the confidence to go out and try
for sure
is a big thing.
Yeah.
So that's, definitely doing the consulting thing, something I've looked into and will likely do.
Yep.
But also, like I said, I don't know what it's going to look like. But I just want to give back in some way or another.
For sure.
So.
Well, cool, man. That's great. I can't wait to see. You got obviously enough experience, I feel like, to be able to point somebody in the right directions to get them started. And it could be a very expensive thing, but doesn't need to be. I feel like now with social, that's another thing. People feel like you have to have the top end gear. I mean, I've killed more shit in jeans and Carhartts than I think anything else with a lever action 30-30.
Man, I hunted with a $200 Ruger and a $20 Tasco for years. And I killed a lot of stuff with it.
There's still guys doing it.
Yeah.
There's still guys doing it. So don't think you got to have the sword. Nothing wrong with any of the top end gear if you can afford it, whatever. But you don't need it getting into, especially young kids on social. Just go out and it's just experience. Get on the mountain, get into the fields, and just learn.
Yeah.
Learn what these animals are doing, and you don't need the $1,500, $2,000 rifles with another $1,000 scope. I mean, it's just you don't need all that, especially to start. Just learn.
It gets out of hand
very quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an optics snob, but I have to remind myself, like, not everybody needs Swaros.
No. Guide life, 100%. That's what you're making a living. You're making a living off of it. You have to. I feel to be able to give that client an opportunity at the best success. You have to have the best as a guide.
Yeah,
it just makes sense. But as a client and you're getting into it, or a young kid, get what you can afford.
Get that $150 pair of Vortex Diamondbacks if that's what you can afford.
Get them, and they work great. I mean, if for getting out, learning, that's all you need. I think that's where guys like you, it could be a big. You could be an awesome factor in helping this new generation try to do it because everyone's so forced to go this way, get the sponsors, hunt harder, longer, whatever their fucking slogans are,
Yeah.
But it's like, man, you don't need it. Get a good pair of boots. That's
Boots.
Boots are very important.
Yeah.
A decent pack will help, but I mean, we've all gone through there and just grinded it out and carrying shit off the mountain with 550 cord around your shoulders and miserable and feel every inch of every mile.
Yeah.
That's just part of it, though. But, the one piece of gear that I would say, if you're going to spend your money on, would be boots. Because
for sure.
You're not getting
they will make or break you.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. If you're putting in any miles, boots are crucial.
Yep. Well, cool, dude. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, it was great to have you swing through. I know you're driving through, and you got a long drive ahead of you, so we'll let you get on the road. But, dude, appreciate you stopping by and giving us the time.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Thanks, bro.